Chapter 101. Hulk. Hulk became more and more rage. A small bug always couldn't catch, but Saitama easily avoided it and made him furious. Not long after, Saitama stopped and looked at Hulk, who was almost 7 meters tall, and his eyes were full of blood and he swung iron fist straight. The light green air currents fluctuated behind him, and Saitama watched quietly instead of evasive. In the eyes of others, Saitama seems to be in a daze, and some people whisper secretly. Does Saitama blow up Hulk like hate? The answer is all wrong. Bang! The thunderous slamming sound resounded through the sky, and the powerful force stirred the airflow to wash in all directions. The terrifying shock wave swept the entire Times Square. All the glass in the distant streets was shattered and the dust was blown away. Everyone's eyes are about to jump out of their sockets, their hearts are chilling, and the whole person's hair is horrified. I saw that Saitama was hit by Hulk's giant punch, his head was slightly moved to the side, but the whole person didn't move. Hit! Nick Fury, who was originally pale and 08 on the Sky Carrier, began to recover from his darkness. No one knew how much pressure he was under. Saitama's appearance is really compelling, just a punch that blows the hatred, which is really shocking. Just this time he turned the manga magazine upside down, and he knew Saitama's abilities and Saitama's weaknesses well. But there is no use at all. What is the weakness? The ghost knows. Is it a cat or a mosquito? What is the ability? Does one punch count as an ability? There is no useful information after looking through it for so long. He just saw it more clearly than the senior leaders of the Heroes Association in the comics. To be honest, until now he doesn't know how to deal with this matter, only to report it to the Security Council. Since it can be hit by Hulk, this shows that there is still a limit. Nick Fury, who thinks about this place, starts to regain his confidence. He firmly believes that this world has no fists that can kill in seconds. But the next moment he pinched his face up and twitched. Advertisement. Saitama, who was on the side of his head, straightened his head and turned towards Hulk, who was close at hand, dissatisfied. Your fist has no power at all, it's not as good as Poirot's head. The power of Poirot's head is the strongest weirdo he has ever seen. The heavy fists, the astonishing speed and the superb fighting skills make a series of rainy offensives that are dizzying. After Saitama realized this power, there was a slight wave in the heart of the stagnant water. If the head of Poirot was stronger. No power at all. This sentence directly pierced into Hulk's self-esteem. No one has ever said this to him so far. Hulk. Hulk expressed dissatisfaction, and kept beating his fierce mouth. His violent eyes were full of fierceness, and he once again punched thunder-like fists on the ground. Saitama raised his hand plainly, clenched his fist, shook it out, and slammed into Hulk's huge fist in one go. Bang! Unstoppable power burst out suddenly from the hitting point, and instantly spread from the arm. Hulk shifted a bit instinctively. He only felt that his body was paralyzed for a while, and his right arm burst directly in the next instant, and then this terrifying force spread to the body like an insect. He only felt that his body was paralyzed for a while, and his right arm burst directly in the next instant, and then this terrifying force spread to the body like an insect. The rock muscles on the tough body surface were crazily disintegrating. At this moment, Hulk fell to the ground like a porcelain doll, cracks bursting out endlessly. The crack madly struck Hulk's right body, an almost fearful expression appeared in his mind, and he let out a painful growl. The blood burst out immediately, spilling into the sky, and General Ross and Betty in the sky not far away were chilled. In the eyes of others, after the two punches collided, Hulk's right arm burst directly and at the same time passed along the arm to the right half of the body. The result was that the entire right half of the body was directly blown up. In addition to starting to instinctively move his head, Hulk's head was not divided into half, but half of the entire body was erased. At the same time, the building behind Hulk's right side went straight to the air in an oblique upward direction, disappearing for hundreds of meters along the way, leaving nothing but dust. The Iron Man was at the scene with cold sweat pouring down from his forehead, and Mr. Fantastic just helped the Invisible Woman to get up and saw that her hind limbs were soft and she sat back on the ground. At this time, layers of air waves began to spread out, scouring dust everywhere, and the late sonic boom rolled against the airflow, causing the hair of the people present to be messy for a while. Peter's dry lips were closed together, and he whispered softly, "It's really another punch." Say the same thing as him as Nick Fury. Advertisement. Collison glanced at the director secretly again, bluffing, not turning pale, but shaking involuntarily all over his body, completely frightened to the point of reshaping the three views. Chief, are you all right? Detecting the power of this punch, what are you doing? Don't act fast. Nick Fury patted the console and yelled at the agents who were panicking below. After he finished roaring, he felt a bit dry in his throat and swallowed his saliva. Woo! With only half of his body left, Hulk fell softly in a pool of green blood, extremely miserable. Blood was pouring out wildly, making a whimper. Hey, I actually moved away a little by instinct. Forget it, I can't live anyway. Saitama saw this, said plain words, and was about to turn around and leave. Yu Guangming glanced at it and was surprised. This is... Hulk's wound unexpectedly began to heal. From the broken wound in the left 673 body cells and blood vessels began to spread, and the muscles automatically connected. In less than 2 minutes, the right body, which was intact, grew out. The audience in front of the TV clearly realized how powerful Hulk's super healing ability is. All those who knew that Hulk was powerful were silent at this moment. The military arrested Hulk many times and threw all weapons, except for the nuclear bomb. But now, he was beaten by Saitama with just one punch, even though it is now full of blood and resurrected in place. What's the use? Just a few more punches. General Rose, who wanted to catch Hulk many times, couldn't help but shudder, and his daughter Betty quickly let the driver approach. Hulk! Hulk didn't growl loudly before, but yelled slightly. Saitama saw it, and said in secret, "This weird person is really strong, or else he would make a continuous normal punch." Then raised his fist. Hulk watched Saitama's movements in fear, and the personality of Hulk in his heart was so frightened that he retreated quickly, pulling a few steps behind his big feet, very humane, raising his hands to hug his head, and whispered, "Ho! No! Don't hit, ho, gee!" Chapter 102. Hulk suddenly looked like a child crying after being abused by an adult. He shook his hands in front of him to signal not to come over. The whole person was in a circle, and at the same time his body began to shrink. Hulk was in fear, and he felt the breath of death just under that fist. He was like an extremely weak ant, crushed to death anytime and anywhere without a scum. He doesn't know how to resist, because he knows how to resist is useless, only quietly waiting for the final arrival. Hulk was terrified. The anger had disappeared and he was completely frightened. He went straight back, so that as long as Saitama was there in the future, he would not come out. Hulk's body surface began to fade, and within a few seconds he became Dr. Banner, who actually had a pair of underwear. Banner turned back to the original state and was embarrassed. It was really terrible just now. I was thinking that I would die in my mind. In fact, he really wanted to get rid of it, because it was because of him that hatred was born, and the battle between the two brought Manhattan into a standstill. The death and injury cannot be estimated, and he doesn't know how many sins he has to pay to clear himself. Hey! Humans? Can weirdos turn back to humans? Saitama's eyes widened, and he blurted out exclaimed when he saw the transformation with his own eyes. Is this a weirdo or a human? He was a little at a loss, seeing this situation for the first time. Call a helicopter flew in the distance, and Betty descended directly from the air along the rope, shouting, "Banner! Banner is not a bad guy." Running quickly to Banner, his hands stretched out like a hen protecting a chick in front of him, looking at the breezy Saitama anxiously, "Banner is not Hulk, he was forced." Betty confided like bitterness, and at the same time separated Banner and Hulk, and the responsibility was transferred to the hatred that forced Hulk and Xiao Zizi. However, Saitama didn't have any meaning at all. Hearing this woman's head was big, she patted her clothes and left. Now that he has become a weak human being, Saitama doesn't bother to care about these messes. Looking at the background of Saitama's departure, Iron Man, who was beaten beyond recognition, left alone. As for what anime and manga character Peter said to him ran out and waited, it was nonsense. But when he returns to the beach house and restarts Jiwis, he should know how serious the situation is. Advertisement Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman left to fish for the Thunderbolt and the Stoneman, helping each other back home. They are not obsessed, and now they are all over water. They can only sigh that there are some outsiders in the world, and there are heavens outside the world. The boss who was killed in 5 hits and 1 group is so simple and rude to knock out, things are volatile. And Peter looked depressed at Iron Man's departure, and now they can't help it if they don't believe it. Thinking of this, the white silk swayed out, and the direction was Sumo's villa. Outside the Manhattan cordon, the military and police deployed a large amount of manpower and material resources to pull up the blockade to prevent anyone from entering. The noisy and clamoring lack of a TV would undoubtedly lag much behind the news. You can only find out about the situation through your mobile social circle. Some boring people stood at the mouth of the ruins and uploaded a tweet together to prove that they were on the scene, and more of them prayed to God that their loved ones and friends were fine. A young couple begged the soldiers to save their daughter, but they were treated indifferently and rudely. Disheartened, they can only stare at the ruins without godly, and their inability to do anything is their portrayal. Someone is walking this way, like a bald head. Someone is walking this way, like a bald head. I saw it too, he took a little girl. Some sharp-eyed onlookers looked sideways. At this time, are the survivors coming out? When the couple heard a gleam of hope in their eyes, they quickly helped to get up. The soldiers stared at Saitama as they walked out, and the leader at the head seemed to be listening. Looking at the bald head, a flash of light flashed, telling the soldiers not to stop him. Saitama walked through the cordon, and the couple struggled to squeeze in. When they saw the little girl, they turned from despair to joy. The wife rushed forward and grabbed the little girl and held it in her arms. The man choked with tears. "Thank you so much, what's the name of the hero?" The people next to him also gave warm applause, happy that a living life was saved. "My eldest brother is Saitama, Dad, he is the most powerful hero who killed the bad guy with one punch." The little girl in her arms interrupted and excited, as if she was a hero. "He is Saitama. Teacher Saitama." At this moment, a man in the crowd screamed and hurried to Saitama to ask for a photo. Advertisement. The husband and wife were a little puzzled, and the others were also puzzled. This action was like seeing a celebrity and couldn't control them at all. But they didn't remember this person at all. The little girl broke free and shouted at Saitama, "Big brother, my name is Rachel, I will always remember you." At this time, the officer brought the soldiers forward with a smile on his face and kindly said, "This hero, our president and minister, hope to talk to you in detail and listen to the heroic deeds." When Saitama heard the words, he dangled his eyes and replied, "If I don't go, I want to go home and play games." Secretly said, "What heroic deeds, the trouble is too painful, it is better to play the game refreshingly." As soon as this remark came out, the onlookers next to him were surprised. What game could be more expensive than meeting the president above? Although the president of the United States is all weird, not everyone can meet the president. The officer did not expect such an answer, and was suppressed with a trace of irritation, and said solemnly, "Ahem, our general would like to ask how you defeated the criminal." "It's simple. There is nothing in the world that can't be solved with one punch. If there is, then two punches." The scene fell into silence, everyone was dumbfounded. "What the hell did you say?" There is only one man who is very excited, and the whole person hates to stick to Saitama, yelling, "Yes, isn't it simple? As long as you become bald." When Saitama heard it, his face turned dark, and he became displeased and fascinated. "You are a bald, shut up." Manmai took the photo happily. The officer looked at the two inconsistently, the blue veins on his forehead were about to burst out, and he sternly said, "You are called Saitama, right? As a superhero, you need to be cautious in your words and deeds, and be supervised by the citizens. I hope you can answer seriously." Following the commander's exhortation, the soldiers immediately stared at Saitama. As soldiers, they hated personal heroism, especially this kind of indifferent people. Saitama glanced around and shouted to the chief, "Listen to me clearly. I don't want your recognition to be a hero. It's because I want to be the only one. Who cares about your ministers, presidents, or citizens? It's my business." Chapter 103. The scene fell into silence once again, and everyone was dumbfounded at the same time. Why do you want to be a hero? It's not about heroes. Are you a hero? Today's Americans have grown up under the influence of Captain America for 70 years. The heroic dedication represented by Captain Steve is the mainstream, and there is no other hero concept at all. Hero and dedication are an equal sign, there is no other explanation. Therefore, saving one's life is a hero, and a hero will definitely save others. It is necessary to sacrifice oneself, but isn't a hero only being named by the people? This naming is to admit, to ask others to identify, not to say that you are a hero or a hero. And Saitama's words are like throwing waves into a calm lake and getting stronger. Is he kidding? What does it mean to want to be a talent? I shouldn't pat my butt and leave. Maybe it's not clear. What does he mean is that when he wants to save someone, he will save someone, but he won't save if he doesn't want to save. It doesn't feel right. It should be that the hero does not need others to acknowledge, and the president has no right to interfere. 320 No right to interfere? What if the hero becomes a criminal? For a while, the melon eaters who had a slight preference for Saitama frowned, whispered to each other, and some people began to imagine whether the hero needs to be managed. This is the beginning of the budding folk thoughts of the Superhero Registration Act. The young man was shocked, because Saitama's remarks were after the meteorite chapter, and now the manga and anime have not been synchronized yet, so he woke up and quickly took notes. Worthy of being a hero of interest. Every sentence is an impact on existing heroism. But in fact, Saitama also said if the hero runs, who will fight? It is an interpretation of hero dedication. Contradictions? No contradiction, Saitama's values are slightly different from those of normal people. He is interested in being a hero, ignoring other people's ideas and making his own, but he knows what a hero does. He also did it at the same time. This point is very prominent in the meteorite chapter. The falling of a meteorite will cause heavy casualties, so it will be blown. Advertisement. He has no interest in knowing the property damage caused afterwards. Can the person, a judge, not die? Just hate other hates, what does it have to do with me? This is Saitama's personal charm. But in Marvel Universe, this heroic concept can be called a crooked way, a challenge to orthodox heroic dedication. How can a hero not be recognized and recognized as a hero by others? Don't people give Tony a nickname like Iron Man? Spider-Man, Punisher, Daredevil and even criminals were given the code names by others to be crowned. The officer turned into anger, and said in a deep voice, Saitama, a hero like you will not be recognized. It doesn't matter, you just think what you want. Saitama dangled his eyes and waved his hand flatly, then turned around and planned to leave. Saitama, you have to think clearly about the rules here in the land of the United States. Please also meet our general. It was very polite, but anyone could hear the threatening tone. You've been endless, and talked a lot. If I don't want to go, I won't go. What do you do with so much? Are you looking for a scolding? You've been endless, and talked a lot. If I don't want to go, I won't go. What do you do with so much? Are you looking for a scolding? Facing the officer's repeated invitations, Saitama went back loudly. You. The commander was at a loss for a moment. General Ross said in the communicator that he could not be an enemy of Saitama because he could not fight, but he had to be invited to the Ministry of Defense. General Ross meant to ask Saitama to talk to them with righteousness and public opinion. At this time, the senior leaders did not know about the comics. It took a few hours before they knew that moral kidnapping of Saitama was futile. Click. All the guns in the soldiers' hands were aimed at Saitama, holding the trigger and waiting for orders. Saitama's big drink is a threat in the eyes of the soldiers. On the land of the United States, blacks who took their mobile phones from their arms would be judged by the white police that they were the first to shoot and kill with a gun, and nothing happened afterwards. All of a sudden, the atmosphere filled with tension, and the eater, including the couple and the fans, quickly dispersed. The bullets didn't have long eyes. This scene was directly filmed by the helicopter's live camera. Frontline reporters wanted to catch up to interview one or two to obtain first-hand information, but they didn't expect to have such an amazing picture. As a media reporter for the uncrowned king, he has already thought about the title of tomorrow. Advertisement shocked. The hero who saved Manhattan was trapped by the military. The confrontation between the hero and the military represents the loss of morality or the incompetent military can only target heroes. This type of product is definitely eye-catching, not to mention the sales volume. The audience in front of the TV was also uncomfortable. They didn't see how powerful they were when they hit the monsters. Suddenly, mail complaining to the Ministry of Defense flooded the president like snowflakes. Saitama looked at each other coldly. He didn't bother to punch these rookies. On the other hand, the officer was a bit unable to get off the stage and didn't know what to do. At this moment, there was a burst of sound from the distant horizon, and everyone heard the reputation, and a human figure appeared, not an Iron Man but a flying person. But this woman should not be a normal human being. The number of shocked young man fans today is higher than that of last year. What did he see? A living Genos. Why does Genos have two balls in front of him and still has short and medium hair? Hiss. Women's genos? Horrible. Manmai took a breath directly, trembling all over. The fans in front of the TV are also dumbfounded. What the hell? Isn't Janos a handsome guy? How can she be a heroic girl? I want to report Marvel Comics deception. Now it is blue sky and white day, no longer dark and vague. As soon as Ji Luosi landed on the ground, her appearance looked like Janos, and people familiar with her could tell it at a glance. Teacher. After Ji Luosi landed, she shouted to Saitama, which made Manmai excited and rushed up nervously. Genos, let's take a group photo. Jaolasi glared sideways, stopped walking with a dry laugh, and secretly said with joy, as expected, it was abnormally cold. This maniac can be regarded as a joke, not annoyed but excited. It is not a loss for a handsome guy to become a beautiful girl. Chapter 104. If anyone in the world is most familiar with Saitama and Janos, except Sumo, it is the animation group in the company. One Punch Man was typed out one by their own hands. The drawings, interior scenes, etc. above were all conceived, and every detail was clearly known. Even the original painting shown by Saitama has been seen many times. But they are just ashamed now. Really? This is cosplay, it can't exist, this is a virtual character. The man in the comic ran out, and the S**x don't be different. It's impossible to run out, maybe the boss knew Saitama and then used it as inspiration to draw a comic painting. Yes, it is possible. In short, it is impossible for comics to run out of people, even if the ability of mutants is impossible. The employees in the company fell into extreme silence when facing the display on the wall, and then began to vent their thoughts in the next moment. There was tension, excitement, and panic. All of them floated on their faces. They couldn't control themselves one by one, and the whole floor began to noisy. Natasha looked at the display screen blankly, restoring all the scenes on it. As an employee, she handled everything in the company with due diligence. But as an agent, she was seriously dereliction of duty. During this period, she didn't have any useful information. She had been inquiring about news with Jin Weian, who was next to her, but it was useless. Wait, Jin Weian? Natasha's eyes were big and her heart trembled. She clearly remembered that the protagonist in the Ghoul comic was named Jin Weian. With a strong memory, she vaguely remembers that Jinmu was also laughed at by employees and colleagues that day that she had obtained the same name. It was a coincidence. Just a joke. Coincidence? Natasha used the power of SHIELD to turn all the information of Jinmu upright, and there was nothing wrong with it. The suspicious director Nick Fury didn't think it was a coincidence, so Natasha kept staring at Jinmu. As she explored the fruitlessness and was about to give up, Saitama appeared. His strength was not inconsistent with that shown in the comics. Advertisement in this way, is this Jin Weian really Jin Weian? Natasha Warong suddenly turned pale, and mechanically turned to the golden wood that was typing on the keyboard next door, only to hear him sigh, today's work is completed, I don't think you need me to teach you future work, right? SHIELD agent. As soon as the voice fell, Natasha's face suddenly turned pale, and her limbs couldn't lift her strength. This was the agent's biggest failure. He knows it. He and Sumo knew from the beginning that I had sneaked in and explored everything, so they let someone in to deal with them, attracting S.H.I.E.L.D's attention with the same name. In fact, the company doesn't have any information. SHIELD is just a jumper and Joker is played around. At this moment, Natasha understood everything. She just came to catch a turtle in the urn, please jump in without asking. Jinmu closed the computer, took out the resignation letter from Andy out of the backpack and placed it in front of Natasha, and said with a blank expression, it is good for both parties to resign by yourself. A group of people around were talking about it, and the heated atmosphere formed a sharp contrast with the solidified air between the two. Natasha was stuck in place. This had nothing to do with force. This was a total crush on strategy. As the largest spy agency on the planet, Natasha was stuck in place. This had nothing to do with force. This was a total crush on strategy. As the largest spy agency on the planet, Sumo is really a scary person. Natasha secretly feels about Sumo who has never met before. Nonetheless, Natasha did not give up. Since Jin Weian knew everything, he would do it first. People were quickly tied up to the Sky carrier, but Sumo didn't react. Even if he wanted to find it, he couldn't find it. Then Shield would be able to pry what he wanted from Jin Wuyan's mouth. Natasha first picked up the pen to fill out the resignation letter, looked at Jin Wuyan slowly, but was stared at by the scarlet pupils in the dark sockets of her left eye. The cold hair suddenly exploded, and the whole person was as cold as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and he wanted to pierce it directly with a pen but found that he had become a fish on the board. Whenever there was a movement, he would be directly pressed and cut to death. At this moment, it suddenly appeared that if the young man in front of him came according to the comics, he would be a ghoul. The comics do not mean reality. The blue-eyed white dragon was hit by the game at the beginning, but in fact it is a missile with amazing mass destruction. So this Jin Mukan cannot be the Jin Mukan shown in the comics, otherwise it would not be felt like this. Advertisement. We must know that Jin Wuyan in the comics is still a very weak young man. 0. This is the human response to powerful creatures seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages. Even an agent with extremely high psychological qualities like Natasha is shy at this moment. Give up, I just killed you in an instant. Jin Wuyan's expression was indifferent, and he warned, the choice Su Mo gave me is not to kill you. Leaving quietly now is your contribution to the company these days. Natasha took a deep breath and finished signing, looking at the golden wood whose eyes had changed back to the original shape. She got up and walked out. Looking back when they left, the employees didn't know what was going on. They focused on the screen and shook their heads secretly. It seems that this company has no secrets at all, and can only be found directly from Su Mo. What kind of power is it? Andy in the office was also not at peace. He was not as big as an old fried dough stick today, so he hurriedly called Su Mo, what is going on here? It's nothing, it's just acquaintance. Of course my friend came up with this comic and I would agree. You. Su Mo is not that simple. People all over the world will know in less than 20 minutes. The more you know that the higher the sales, it's not just right. Uncle Andy doesn't have to worry about other things. If the media asks you, you just say you don't know. Oh, I don't know what you are hiding, but as a friend of your father, I can only persuade you. According to your celestial people, you have to think twice. Of course, things did not exceed my expectations. Su Mo happily hung up the phone. He was no longer on the Broadway rooftop but was sitting on the sofa watching TV, waiting for things to ferment. He doesn't need to prepare anything, strength is everything. Su Mo sorted out the previous lottery by the way and spent 10 million fans. In addition to the 2 pieces of Saitama that have been synthesized, there are also Monkey.D. Luffy Fragments X2, Gray's Ice Modeling Magic, Stone Ghost Mask, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Shadow Scissors, Doraemon, Dragon Slayer Naz Fragment X3. Chapter 105. Manhattan Cordon. When Saitama saw him, he was stunned. How did Yanosh become a girl? Transforming people are so capricious. Oh? Genos, why are you doing this? Jiluosi looked at Saitama expressionlessly and replied, Teacher, my name is Jiluosi now. It is a robot made by the master Su Mo. It has all the memories and personality of Genos. Although Jiluosi is a night metal robot made by Skynet, its central CPU is made up of the memory of Yanosh. Jerome, let's go. Saitama doesn't know what to say. Since he has the memory and personality of Yanosh, it should be okay to call him a teacher, right? Forget it, so be it. The troublesome Saitama did not refuse. Since there was one before, it is not a big deal to recognize one now, and he does not bother to think about whether the two are equal. 680 Yes, teacher. Jiluosi followed behind Saitama to leave. But the surrounding soldiers kept pointing their guns at them, without any intention of giving way. Jiluosi looked back at the officer, raised her right hand directly at him, and said politely, Don't be rude to the teacher. As he spoke, his right hand transformed into a multi-machine gun barrel like flowing water, and faint blue particles appeared. Jiluosi only has 3 original Genos parts, and only 1 incinerator is loaded, but it doesn't mean that Genos is inferior. Genos had to replace everything that was damaged by the expenditure warrior, and Jiluosi could be as good as ever as long as the metal properties of the night state were not bad enough. In addition, the ion cannon, the strongest weapon on board, is not as lethal as the incinerator, but it has a long battery life. In general, Jiluosi's explosive output is not as powerful as Yanosh, and the battle can be fully balanced, and he can still fight even under severe damage. The officer's face was ugly. At this time, the communicator in his ear heard General Ross's annoyance, and he couldn't help looking up at the camera in the mid-air helicopter, even more annoyed. He spoke word by word, "Let go." The soldiers had to put their guns down and split out a path with dissatisfaction. Manmai and media reporters wanted to catch up, but found that Luosi and Saitama were so fast that they disappeared in a short while. In the Trident building, Nick Fury kept issuing tracking orders, calling satellites and street probes, but no figures were found. At this time, Commander Hill brought even worse news and hesitated. "Director, Agent Natasha has been discovered." Advertisement bang. Hearing this, Nick Fury immediately slapped the table angrily, and shouted in a low voice, "How are you now?" "It's okay, Agent Natasha has uploaded the situation." Hill used the tablet to transmit to the small display in front of Nick Fury, which was full of Natasha's report on her resignation. Nick Fury, who was getting more and more obsessed, waited patiently to read it all. He hugged his forehead with his hands, and no one saw his face. Hill shook his head secretly, lamenting that SHIELD had been completely defeated in this spy operation. After a while, Nick Fury suddenly raised his head and said, "Now that we are holding a secret meeting of the Security Council on the security of the Earth, we must take action, otherwise we will lose the initiative." "Yes." Hill looked up fiercely and resolutely responded. In another office in the building, here is the office of Nick Fury's old boss, Alexander Pierce. The former director of SHIELD. Pierce is now an intermediary between SHIELD and the Security Council, responsible for coordination and communication between the two parties. When Nick Fury reported the situation to the Security Council, he himself received a report like this. As the high-level council of the council did not know about the comics, Nick Fury started directly from the blue-eyed white dragon at the beginning, and talked about a series of incidents up to now. As the high-level council of the council did not know about the comics, Nick Fury started directly from the blue-eyed white dragon at the beginning, and talked about a series of incidents up to now. "This kid is so capable, find someone to see if he can take it in." After reading the report, Pierce narrowed his eyes. After a moment of contemplation, he took out a strange button and pressed it. After waiting for a while, a strong white man walked in, and when he came back, no one closed the door. "Rumlow, ask people to pay attention to this person all the time, let people try it out first." Rumlow said nothing but picked up the photo, nodded and went out. Pierce closed his eyes and secretly said, "Fury's shield has grown stronger and stronger, and we will take over the Hydra on it later." In addition to being the former head of SHIELD, Pierce also has an identity as one of the Hydra spy chiefs. And Brock Rumlow appears to be the captain of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Rapid Response Special Forces, but in fact he is also a member of Hydra, codenamed Crossbones. Nick Fury never thought that Hydra had penetrated so deeply, and at the same time began to intervene in the matter of Sumo. Manhattan Effect Area. A villa advertisement. Peter yelled in Sumo's ear, and at the same time danced. "Sumo, is he really Saitama? It's great, what else, I'm just interested in it, it's so cool." Sumo broke out in a cold sweat, but he didn't expect that Saitama's appearance would have such a big impact on Peter. Once he came in, it was not enough to say so long. When Luo brought Saitama back to the villa, he saw Peter excited in it. When Peter saw it, his eyes glowed and rushed to Saitama. "Ms. Saitama, teach me how to become stronger." This time, the 5-on-1 attack was also a big blow to the little spider, and the spider silk of such a big opponent was simply powerless. "So I want to become stronger urgently." Saitama looked at Peter with a flat face and said, "Since you are Sumo's friend, as long as you can beat me with a game, I will teach you." When Peter heard, he secretly liked that Saitama was so good at playing games, wouldn't he be determined to win? Sure enough, Saitama was beaten 3:0 by Peter, sitting in front of the game console with a dazed expression, and the handle slipped directly from his hand. Saitama looked up to the sky unwillingly and shouted, "How is this possible?" Obviously, after changing the world, he was abused again. Saitama had to solemnly said, "My secret to becoming stronger is 100 push UPS, 100 sit UPS, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer long run." 1.1 When Peter heard this, he was depressed and said, "But Mr. Saitama, I do it every day, but I haven't gotten stronger at all, and my head is not bald." He understands all of these, but it's useless. "Peter, it might be possible. How many times do you do it a day?" Sumo interjected with a flash of light in his eyes. Peter wondered, how many times? "Isn't it once?" Go back and read the comics. Do you really think this training is so easy? Sumo took Peter's handle and Saitama started your visit. Peter frowned and quickly ran out and swiftly went home, rumbling around and finally found the comic. At this time, a paragraph in the comic made Peter's whole body terrified, and he took a breath. Think carefully. Chapter 106. Just started to die in pain, always thinking that even if I take a day off, even if I'm tired, even if I vomit blood, even if your feet are so painful that you can't move, you still have to squat, even if your arms creak and make a weird noise, you still have to do push-ups. Practicing to vomit blood? My feet are so painful that I can't move? The arm could no longer hold it, and the words waiting came into Peter's sight, and he couldn't help but wonder, what's the matter? The previous paragraph was subconsciously ignored. Everyone sneered at the secret of Saitama training as the people in the comics, because this is not a very difficult training. Someone went to learn to train, and obviously none of them succeeded. But Peter now finds that it is much more than that simple. If it is said that such basic muscle training is not difficult, why do you say spit blood, arms rang, and feet can't move? Just like ordinary people do 100 push-ups, does he vomit blood? Obviously this is impossible. Then there is only one possibility that can lead to this result, that is, this person keeps doing push-ups without rest at all so that he passes out of a coma. 09 even continues to do it after waking up. In the same way, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a long-distance run of 10 kilometers. These are just ordinary methods if they are treated as a round of training. But what if 10 rounds? How about 100 rounds? 1000 push-ups, 1000 sit-ups, or 10,000 push-ups, and 10,000 sit-ups. Squat 1000 times, 10,000 times, long distance running 100,000 meters, 1 million meters? I exercise all day, and after one round, I will continue the next round. Thinking of this, Peter sat down on the ground. This is what Saitama calls tenton persistence, reaching the ultimate persistence. In persisting, I didn't consider whether I could complete it. As long as I firmly believed that I could become stronger by following this method, no matter how much I didn't think about when I could complete it. There is no limit. Peter stared at the words in the comics. No matter the heat or the cold, he would grit his teeth and do it no matter how painful or tired. This lasted for 3 years. Is this the strongest way of Saitama? Peter didn't know, he just wanted to give it a try. Saitama, you are too food, let Jiluosi play with you. Sumo will feel boring after playing. It's no wonder that Behind King can crush Saitama with 2 fingers. All tricks depend on luck, it's strange to win. Did he? A text message came in. Advertisement. Sumo opened it and took a look. He hoped that Peter Spider-Man would succeed. He looked at Saitama, who was addicted to the game, and secretly said, it is difficult to become a strong player like Saitama only by cycling. There is a concept in One Punch Man called a limiter. Due to the differences in power between species and individuals, there are limits that cannot be eliminated no matter how much effort is made. The significance of this limit is to allow various creatures to grow within the scope of not losing the survival consciousness and rationality of the species. This growth limit is called a limiter. It varies from person to person. Ordinary people are inherently incompetent, so the limiter is small, while the limiter for superpowers is large. In One Punch, the eccentric is because of various factors that broke the limiter, and the body regenerates into other species, reshaping the limiter. And Saitama is a creature that breaks the limiter but keeps the human body. Was his method of breaking the limiter exercise again and again? The author one did not say, no one knew, not even Saitama himself. Does Marvel Universe have the concept of limiter? Even if there is, Peter is not Saitama, everyone has a different limiter, and even the same method cannot be broken. Thinking of this, Sumo wanted to post a message to persuade him not to be in vain, but the hand who picked up the phone stopped for a moment. Maybe it can be successful. Maybe it can be successful. As long as he is stronger, Peter will not feel useless. The rich rely on technology, and the poor rely on the upgraded Marvel Universe. The limiter is really inaccurate. Sumo greeted Jin Wian who had returned, and introduced each other. Saitama, who was abused again, did not believe in evil and pulled Jin Wian into a new round of fighting games. Battle game, if you wait for the 300 hero game to be completed, will it be like this? Sumo's head flashed brightly, and he thought of a strange and interesting scene. Saitama chose the bald caveman to play and shouted, "Look at me for a serious punch." "What? Not dead yet? How could someone can bear my fist?" In the end, after Saitama used all his skills, he desperately found that the record of the bald mantle was 0-10-0. Sumo gave a dry cough. "Forget it, I hope Saitama can play." I walked to the computer, opened Twitter, and it was full of messages. Sure enough, as he expected, the company's official website forum was the first to explode. "You may not believe it, I saw Saitama." Advertisement. Hehe, you don't believe me when I say it, I still saw Geno's, the women's clothing. Are you stupid upstairs, who doesn't know the TV show? Weak, ask, what the hell is going on? My first impression was that the man in the comics ran out. I don't believe it, it should be cosplay, this is a special effect, it is a special effect. Is it good to recognize the reality? The special effect has broken Times Square into a mess. The official hasn't responded so far, it always feels like a big deal. Now the manga is going to be sold out. Maybe the manga artist knows Saitama and draws it to make money, and he will make a lot of money when he comes on stage. Since there is Saitama, is there still my little Jinmu? For a time, both Edward Twitter and forums gathered a large number of fans, and at the same time, more and more unfamiliar IDs appeared. It can be said that comics have gradually entered the eyes of everyone in the world. They immediately think that they are paper people who have run out, but they can then deny it. 560 Bias and Nick Fury's guess. It is the comic created by Sumo after he met him as the protagonist. Otherwise, how would you explain it? When encountering unknown events, people always want to use known knowledge to guess and explain. So most people in the world just pass by with the correct answer. After browsing, Sumo found that the Department of Defense and the White House were playing down the entire incident, and the previous filming in the media was not allowed to be broadcast. S.H.I.E.L.D's speed is quite fast, and it has begun to suppress public opinion with all its strength, but this is obviously futile. Sumo murmured, and at the same time he had already guessed what the non-chief wanted to do next. Do. Sumo, the company has received a joint investigation from the Intellectual Property Office of the Ministry of Commerce and the local state government. Sure enough, return the intellectual property? This one-eyed dragon can really think. Without the ability to tear his face apart, he started rummaging around. Such investigations are not closed down in the United States, but rather to monitor the company's dynamics throughout the entire process but will not interfere with normal operations. Uncle Andy, as long as it doesn't prevent us from publishing comics, we will spread the news at the same time, and at the same time, Zion Mank will publish an additional issue of comics tomorrow. What comic? It's all at the door, how can I not slap my face severely? Chapter 107. The next morning Sumo and others slept until dawn, but many people did not sleep at all. For example, in the military, General Ross took a large number of people to clean the battlefield, and at the same time brought back the abhorrent scraps. The Ministry of Defense has sought perfect super soldiers since Captain Steve. In addition to creating the Captain of the United States, they also want a large number of American teams to sweep the world. Because of successful cases, even if a byproduct like Hulk is born, they firmly believe that the dawn of success is in sight. But Saitama's appearance is just a blow to the head, hitting it directly from the top of the head, stunned, punching and hating, whether Super Soldier Steve kneels when he hits the wind. It can be said that the Ministry of National Defense is full of mixed ginseng from the beginning to the end. There is no happiness at all, it is all confusion, pain, irritability, and so on. Pursuing a 70-year plan, but once turned into a rookie. With regard to SHIELD, Nick Fury and the Security Council had an overnight video discussion. At the beginning, it was politicians who acted calmly but began to feel panic as the meeting time took place. After knowing its power, even if they don't think about comics or anything, it makes them feel a sword hanging from their necks, and they can swipe down anytime, anywhere. The plan of the Avengers team was passed immediately, asking money for money, asking people for giving, the only requirement is to be able to control Saitama. In the eyes of them, including non-chiefs, Saitama's danger level surpassed Sumo, surpassed the blue-eyed white dragon, and reached unprecedented heights. This group can also be said to be an anti-Saitama alliance. When Nick Fury walked out of the meeting room, the sky was already bright, and the security of the Trident started patrolling early in the morning, but he could not feel safe at all. He didn't dare to use force to pull the beard of the beast, the result was too great, so he had to use the obvious reasons to monitor Marvel Comics. At the same time, he also found Sumo's residence, but considering the situation, he did not send anyone to monitor him, so Nick Fury is undoubtedly an extremely cautious person. Director, something happened. Commander Hill hurried over, shouted, and handed over a Marvel magazine. This is a friend mank issued by the Target company this morning, and it is also a collector's edition with the first issue of Juvenile Jump. There is only one comic in the entire magazine. Nick Fury took it over with an ugly face, and took a look at it. The cover was 5 black shadows standing under the crimson full moon, on a large net made up of several silk threads. It seems that the aura is very strong. Advertisement cut. Crimson Eye. The name of the comic is composed of blood, which makes Nick Fury dislike, and always feels that it has other meanings. When I turn it over, the simple and straightforward words make him shocked. A hole. Nick Fury only looked at one sentence, his face was pale and his hands trembled with anger. How dare he? After spreading overnight, even if SHIELD government suppressed the media, it could not block the population. The live broadcast at that time was still watched by 60% of Americans. It can be said that overnight Marvel Comics became the most well-known company in the United States. The news of Stark Industries' announcement of new energy at the top of the topic list was kicked down. The United States flooded into the official website forums and Edward's Twitter to discuss Saitama and comics, and countless netizens were making noise here. They also knew that Marvel was under a joint investigation last night, and they were worried that they were also thankful that the comics had not been blocked. They also knew that Marvel was under a joint investigation last night, and they were worried that they were also thankful that the comics had not been blocked. The popularity is the first after the refresh early in the morning. The Twitter company has worked overtime to expand the server, because it has been stuck since last night and had to increase it. But at this moment, suddenly the server became extremely smooth and even the number of online users dropped, which made the Twitter staff a little embarrassed. It seems to be this tweet. An employee pointed to a message, and others looked at it. Extraordinary news. In the face of government investigations, Marvel Comics specially published the first issue of Zion Mank Collector's Edition today. There is only one comic in the entire book. So don't hurry up to buy it. This is a clarion call for counterattack. Sure enough, as soon as this tweet came out, fewer and fewer people spoke. The employees looked at each other and hurriedly asked one person to rush out to buy a copy. It's human nature to watch the excitement. When a company is investigated and publishes comics the next day, does it mean to resist? Especially this comic company has a relationship with the hero. Edward squeezed out of the crowd and looked at the bookstore with a crowd of people. His forehead was sweating, and he looked at the grey sky. Advertisement, he secretly said in his heart. Suddenly, the supply of publications is sufficient, and it is still synchronized across the United States. This is by no means a temporary motive, it is a long-awaited plan. What exactly is Marvel? What does Sumo, the chairman and cartoonist, want to do? What is the relationship between him and the hero Saitama? This is what everyone wants to know. At this moment, Marvel released a comic book that is even more confusing. When Edward rushed home, only the quiet atmosphere could help his thinking. He made coffee as usual, opened the comic, and skipped the cover and title page. This opening picture is not black and white, but full color. Is it true that Chengdu is full color? No wonder it is much thicker than usual. Edward's eyes were fascinated, and he turned back with questions. Under the exquisite painterly and beautiful colors, the curtains of narration were opened. Blood hands, elites in suits and leather shoes, hideous faces, upper-class figures hugging left and right, ordinary people lying on the ground, and the last few people. As people will gradually decay, the country will perish one day, even if it is a prosperous imperial capital for thousands of years, it is just a corrupted hell on earth. The demons and demons in human skin, Li does, arrogant and domineering, but I dominate. If the sky is incapable of punishing the evil, we will die in the darkness. All of us are professional killers. Edward's eyes widened immediately, his legs numb, his speech numb, his scalp was numb, his brain was like a paste, and his nervousness was suppressed. I drank the coffee quickly, but I couldn't calm down at all. Staring at the comic, Edward said tremblingly, "What is this going to do? Rebel?" Shockingly speechless, if this kind of comics were released plainly, it would be fine, but now it is being watched by the government. The intention behind the release at this time is by no means simple. Su Mo, the chairman of this company, is hardly expected, and the attitude of the White House has not been clear before, which is very vague. The top is scared. Edward can only think so. Chapter 108. Xavier Youth Talent Academy. Charles was in a wheelchair. Behind him, Jean was pushing him slowly on the green lawn. The new day was full of hope because I saw the school life was restless, but Charles didn't have any smile on his face. Jin knows why, because Professor Charles is holding the comic magazine she just bought, which is too real. Charles closed his eyes after reading the opening paragraph, not knowing what he was thinking. Jean guessed that these words might remind the professor of his best friend Eric. His methods have always been radical just to reflect this killer line. After a while, Charles opened his eyes and then looked down. The plot begins when a young man named Tajmi rescues two travelers from the monster called the Dangerous Earth Dragon on the way to the Imperial Capital. When Tajmi indicated that he was going to the Imperial Capital, he said, "The Imperial Capital is different from what you imagined. Although it is prosperous, it hides a monster that Su Mo is more terrifying than the Earth Dragon. It's people, all monsters with human faces and beast hearts. It's impossible for me to go back. I came to the Imperial Capital to work hard to save the village." At the beginning, the entire comic was covered with a great tone, and Charles carefully pondered the meaning and then read it. After entering the Imperial Capital, Tajmi ran to the barracks hoping to get ahead and buy the village. The 657 points surprised Charles. What's the meaning? Why did the village buy it? Isn't it just poverty? Later, Tajmi was unwilling to become a recruiter and wanted to take a shortcut to compete for promotion. Unfortunately, it didn't work at all. At this moment, a woman came out to give him an idea. The price was to invite her to drink and then say that money and people are the way to get promoted. Tajmi easily believed, and gave a lot of money. Seeing Charles shook his head here, he was too young. Sure enough, Tajmi realized this simple scam after being prompted by others 10 hours later. When Tajmi had no money and nowhere to go, a kind and lovely girl came out to take in Tajmi. Charles couldn't help being happy for Tajmi. Although there were liars, there were still many kind-hearted people, and he was really kind-hearted and beautiful. In the conversation between Tajmi and the kind-hearted family, it turned out that Tajmi had two companions. The village starved to death all year round. As long as the village was bought, there was no need to pay heavy taxes, which greatly improved the survival rate. Advertisement. But in the middle of the journey, the three of them were separated because of the attack by thieves. Tajmi was very grateful to the eldest lady's family. As said in the painting, he was helped by kind people. When he went to the streets the next day, a guard began to reveal some information. The emperor of this country is only a child, and the minister is the prime culprit of corruption in this country. At the same time, he also pointed out that heavy taxes are also the minister's idea. This is the common sense of the imperial capital. In addition, it also mentioned the killer group that targeted the nobles of high-ranking officials to enter the night attack. At this time, Charles felt a little uncomfortable. Since the minister was the prime culprit of corruption according to the guard, his interest group is now the biggest beneficiary, which is now the high-ranking officials of the imperial capital. Otherwise, it is impossible for him to corrupt the country alone. Isn't the eldest lady's family pushing to take in Tajmi like this is not so simple on the surface? The story is still going on. At night, the eldest lady's mother walked down the corridor with a diary and said strangely interests make people unable to show off. But the next painting made Charles's heart tense. She was cut in the waist, so fast that she didn't even react, and she let out a surprise. At this time, Tajmi, who was sleeping, suddenly felt murderous and quickly got up and thought of the assassin group that the day guard said. At this time, Tajmi, who was sleeping, suddenly felt murderous and quickly got up and thought of the assassin group that the day guard said. The next picture shows the same background picture as the cover, the difference is that the 5 figures are clearly visible. 2 men and 3 women, and a woman wearing glasses and holding scissors are in the villa. The next moment, the guards were crushed to death by him. At this time, Charles also saw that the woman who had previously tricked Tajmi's appearance and attire had changed, has killed the eldest lady's father. And ready to kill the eldest lady. At this time, Tajmi was already fighting with the girl named Crimson Eye, but Tajmi was weak, and he could only meet death if the sword fell. Aheg, but the woman who cheated the money before stopped talking, and brought Tajmi to a room and kicked the door open. Everything inside surprised Tajmi and made Charles frown. Lots of mummy corpses were hung on it, all kinds of dissection and torture props, dripping with blood, as if the hell on the earth, under the superb painter's performance, is as deep as it is. This is the darkness of the imperial capital. Tajmi was stunned. Advertisement. It's their family's interest to use sweet words to deceive, trust and abduct to this point and tortured to death. At this time, Tajmi found that both of his companions were here. The female companion was tortured to death, and the male companion was bruised and bruised. But this eldest lady showed an abnormally hideous face, a face that was completely distorted like a devil and was completely different from the cute face before. He even said the countryman is a domestic animal, a woman has flowing hair, but she is messy, saying she should thank me for taking care of her. Even Charles, who has always been a good man, feels sick. Can such a sadistic family in the skin of a good man live to this day? But at this time Charles was stunned, his mind was full of scenes of mutant children being tortured to death, and only a few escaped from the base under William Stryker's hands. Laser Eye is one of them. This scene is so similar to the comics. It is precisely because of the support of the minister as the backing that such a high-ranking nobleman can be so disgusting and distorting. It is precisely because of the private acquiescence of the American government that executioners like Stryker have a base to conduct human experiments on mutants. Charles endured his heartache and continued to look down. Tajmi, who had awakened, hacked the eldest lady to death with a single sword, which made people happy. At this time, his male companion also died of Lusala's disease in the late stage, and he also mentioned that the hostess prescribed medicine to others and wrote their situation as a diary for pleasure. This explains the interest in the mouth of the woman who was cut in half by scissors. Looking at Tajmi in the comics, crying, what happened to this imperial capital? Yet, what is going on in this world? Charles closed the cartoon and looked at the mutant teenagers who were running and chasing. This is the only pure land, he must guard it, he does not allow it to become ruins. He knows from this cartoon that a person's power is far from enough. Peeping is everywhere, and the safety of mutants is at stake. Eric is too radical and inappropriate. He needs help to achieve a strategic alliance. Shi Jin, make an appointment for me, the chairman of Marvel Comics, Su Mo. Chapter 109. At noon that day, the internet was in an uproar, Twitter and the official forum were directly fried, and the previous netizens were again interested. Hero Saitama, Comics, the decaying imperial capital, and Haki Wushuans, we are all professional killers, and other words swept the internet for a while. This comic makes my scalp numb and full of energy to confess Tajmi, it just seems to have some scum. It might as well be called slag rice. You have noticed that the next episode without the comics is not a magazine serialization but a weekly single book, which means that you can see it again tomorrow. Wow, this is a big outbreak for Marvel Comics, and it's really deadly to publish such comics during the investigation. It's dead but it dares to do it. 4 hours have passed since the release date. Has the joint investigation sounded out? It's still a matter of thinking. The government counseled. It was originally an idle investigation. Is it illegal to publish normal comics? The internet is noisy, and such discussions are flooding all corners of the internet. At the same time, they think such investigations are simply nonsense and untenable. There are even some lawyers in Manhattan who bluntly said on the internet, the investigation is best done here, otherwise it will be unreasonable. If Marvel needs their help, they are obliged. In addition, some civil organizations strongly urge the New York City government to award Saitama with the Medal of Heroes so that they can be worthy of his contributions. Saitama has also directly become an internet celebrity. Nearly 1 million netizens have become his fans, establishing a support group and shouting for him on the internet. During this period, the military will be pulled out and flogged to create a contrast. At this time, people have a clear understanding of the relationship between Marvel and Saitama. Saitama is often regarded as a friend of Chairman Su Mo. This is also true. After Saitama was touted to the altar, Marvel was also known as the Hero Company. Manhattan Villa 1 Su Mo leaned on the sofa with Erlang's legs tilted, and the noon news was playing on the TV, watching with gusto. The New York Times, the appearance of Saitama has shown that the world is not simple. Maybe there are more undiscovered strong men. Are these enemies or friends? Advertisement America Today, the power shown by Saitama is incredible. How should the government restrain such a person? Washington Post, Marvel Comics released a new comic during the investigation. The content is a metaphor for satirizing the current government's approach. A lot of news happened to cover up Saitama's actions to save Manhattan, and avoid serious discussions. Lorna sat over, shook her head and sighed, Even if the people regard Saitama as a hero, the White House doesn't think so. On the contrary, they will regard Saitama as a great enemy. Of course, they don't want someone to be above their heads, but now they are still helpless. Suemo picked up 2 apples, stuffed one to Lorna's mouth and the other ate it by herself, saying, Saitama and they are okay, Alice. After all, Villa number 2 where Saitama is located also has a TV. I'm afraid Ji-Luosi also has ideas. Alice's projection appeared, and she curled her lips humanely and said, how could he care like Saitama, but Ji-Luos was very angry when she heard it, but she was dragged by Saitama to play the game again. Because Jilitha's memory came from Yanosh, after torturing Saitama for the first time, she felt that she was too much and she let it go. And Saitama still believes that he really thinks that he is still a bit level, and the family is not up to the point of playing games. Although there are many criminals in Marvel Universe, it is far from the world with a punch. Tenton is the city being attacked, and the movement is particularly loud. Although there are many criminals in Marvel Universe, it is far from the world with a punch. Tenton is the city being attacked, and the movement is particularly loud. Saitama suddenly became laid back here, so he went to see it from afar when the supermarket was on sale, but didn't buy it at all. Because the villa has everything, now his treatment is that as soon as the heroes and celebrities go out, they will be chased to take a photo. He just hides and plays games because of trouble. Mei Zizi is a portrayal of his current life, and has become a bald house. Will Saitama lose strength because of not killing monsters? Suemo thought about it for a while, then left his head behind, and was about to flirt with Lorna, only to see Alice frowning. What happened? It looks like you are in big trouble. With a wave of Alice's hand, the ultra-clear projector replaced by Tony Landic began to emit countless particles, and then formed a stereo projection model. Advertisement on the road outside Xiao Xiao, there is a specially installed mini camera here. Suemo cannot use the telescope technique to monitor all the time. 0. 3 men are walking from the highway to the villa. One is a big guy with a hairy face and messy hair. The other wears a semicircular red helmet and tights like philosophical wrestling. His body is rock-like muscles. A strong sense of oppression. The 2 were second. They were headed by an old man wearing a helmet and a robe. The 3 of them moved forward slowly, not fast or slow, as if they intended to let people know that they were coming. The high-definition projection perfectly showed their external appearance. Sumo's eyes condensed, and the rest of the light glanced at Lorna. Lorna's face was even more panicked, and her hands trembled slightly. She only felt that her heart was in a mess. She knew who this old man was. 0. She lives hard in New York, desperately supporting herself in order to find him, but she is about to appear now, but she is not at all happy. Lorna is very scared, because she is very satisfied with the current life and fears that the status quo will be broken. This old man's coming is definitely not to reminisce about the past. At this time, a big warm hand wrapped her white little hand, and her face was touched by warm palms. Lorna looked up and looked at Suemo affectionately. Leave everything to me, Lorna. Suemo calmed Lorna's emotions with pity, got up and walked outside. Lorna couldn't sit still and followed Suemo. Alice said silently, don't make it seem like a parting, there is still a big bald head next to it. Lorna reflected this, showing an awkward and charming smile, yes, it's not a big deal. You can't say that. Of course, the housework is handled by myself. I don't want Saitama to punch people away. Lorna will be sad. Suemo waved his hand and paused, it just so happens that I want to ask him why he abandoned Lorna for so long, and he didn't answer well. Just beat me up. Lorna heard the words, feeling sweet in her heart. Soon, the 2 parties met not far from the villa, and the old man strode forward to look at Lorna's cloudy eyes with joy. When he was about to speak, Suemo yelled first, hello, father-in-law. Chapter 110. Hello. Father-in-law. Suddenly Sumo's voice rushed ahead of Magneto King Eric Lanchel, and Suemo happily stepped forward to say hello. After all, what Lorna's father said should be respected. Respecting the old and loving the young is our rule. But Sumo's voice was no less than a thunderbolt in the ears of Magneto King, and the land was cracked. The whole person was suddenly indifferent to life, and an unspeakable feeling was in his heart. This is the feeling of heart, myocardial infarction. The 2 behind him were even more confused. As Magneto saw that his heads were not very bright, he did not explain the purpose of the trip. The big man with a hairy face quickly angered Suemo with a fierce spirit and said, "Boy, what are you talking about? What father-in-law? What nonsense! I'll teach you something." After speaking, he strode forward and waved his right hand to Suemo. Magneto narrowed his eyes without saying 453. "You should be a saber-toothed tiger, like Wolverine's brother." Suemo faced the gradually growing sharp claws and whispered plainly. As soon as the saber-toothed tiger heard that he was furious, he who hated Logan the most, his sharp claws suddenly speeded up and no longer kept his hands. "Go to death, kid." And Suemo seemed to be scared and silly in his eyes, and it seemed to be extremely weak. Boom! The sound of a metal collision rang in everyone's ears, and the saber-toothed tiger's excited expression solidified. It didn't look like blood splashing through its head, but directly hit an extremely indestructible object. The sting of the shock made him unbearable. Click! Cracks appeared in the sharp claws, and then spread out like a spider web. When the saber-toothed tiger was stunned, the entire claw broke directly, and the other half fell directly to the ground. "Where are my paws?" The saber-toothed tiger's eyes widened, and his mouth trembled for a while, unable to speak. "Cough, sorry for your paw, here." Suemo coughed dryly, picked up the dark paw and put it back into the saber-toothed tiger's hand. The saber-toothed tiger shuddered and shook his whole body with excitement. The broken claws were thrown away with his backhand, and his feet couldn't help but retreat, and said in surprise, "Advertisement, who are you?" It was the first time that he saw someone blocking the claws by virtue of a physical body, and Logan could only pass him with claws injected with Edmund alloy. Ordinary steel looks like tofu in front of him. This man's skin is hardly comparable to Edmund alloy. "Who am I? I am the son-in-law of Magneto, the leader of your brotherhood, and the saber-toothed tiger will not go back soon, otherwise, how can you explain to your leader?" Suemo scowled and scolded. Its voice was fierce. Like this, the silly saber-toothed tiger was drunk at once, and turned his head to look at Magneto. This look was like a cat making a mistake, her eyes were at a loss, and Lorna couldn't help covering her mouth with a smile. Magneto was an angry person. "I have never seen such an unpromising person." I believed everything and snorted seriously, "Shameful." Then with a wave of his hand, the saber-toothed tiger was pulled by the metal belt on his body and leaned to the back. "Father-in-law is indeed the leader of the mutants. The assassination of the president is very hacky." Upon seeing this, Suemo happily took a picture of his heroic deeds. Another Magneto's red tank touched his nose, and it was best to take a step forward and wait for the order. "Humph, Suemo, who is your father-in-law? Don't try to hug you with a hippie smile." The veins of Magneto King's forehead are about to burst out, but years of wind and rain have forced him to suppress his anger, and it also left a kind impression on his daughter when he first met. With a face of Buddhism, he said solemnly, "I will take my daughter away today. Thank you for your care these days. Now you can let it go. As a thank you, you can seek help from the Brotherhood in the future." Looking sideways at Lorna, she whispered softly, "Child, go home." After speaking, she stretched out her hand, hoping that Lorna could put her hand on it. If it were someone else, how could he pull so much when he tried to tie people up, but for his daughter he had to be patient like a good father. Lorna pursed her mouth. Although she was pleased to see her father, she wanted to leave Suemo. How could she be willing? As soon as she left her front foot, Gwen moved in with her back foot in doubt to grab the lair. In the end, love overcame family Lorna, and she uttered, "I won't go back. It's nice to be here. Just come here and see me if you have anything to do." Advertisement. After finishing speaking, I felt a little inhumane, and looked down at the green lawn with a guilty conscience. Suemo spread his hands together and urged his shoulders to express that this is terrible, but it is true. "Lorna Lanchel, you have to remember whose daughter you are." Magneto couldn't help being angry, staring at Lorna with his eyes squinted, and he paused word by word, "You are my Magneto's daughter. I will never allow you to be a shit comic assistant all day long. This job is wasting time. Go back with me, back to the mutant family, and back to me. This is your mission as a mutant." Its majestic momentum makes people can't help but bow their heads, and Lorna is even more uncomfortable. Magneto is her father after all, and she must be recognized as a daughter even in America that worships freedom. Immediately, Lorna's eyes could not help being flushed. Suemo heard the words, the smile on his face has gradually disappeared, and he raised his brows, and said blankly, "Daughter? Mission? It is high sounding. If you really care about it, how can you recognize Lorna until now? I'm afraid you didn't know that Lorna was your daughter before. The reason why you want to find it back is because she and you have the ability to control the magnetic field. You may feel a little guilty for not taking care of Lorna, but it's different when you know her abilities. Eric Lanchel, Magneto King, after all, you still want to fulfill your lifelong ideals. Family friendship is just a tool in your eyes. Every word of Su Mo shocked Magneto's heart, and every word of his fell in his heart. He was right. Magneto thinks that way, and his personality is the same. 4.7 Su Mo can be seen from the ruthless abandonment of the Devil Girl in X-Men 3 after losing her ability. Magneto will only choose the side that is helpful to him when facing a choice, and the others are all cumbersome. I am afraid that this kind of thinking came after the death of his wife and daughter during the apocalypse period. Magneto's eyes flashed with cold light, and the surrounding magnetic field began to change, exuding powerful interference, and the air became a little distorted. At this moment, a car came by accident on the highway and floated out of thin air directly under the drag of invisible force. The passengers above jumped down shouting for help, and the car automatically disintegrated into pieces of metal floating behind Magneto. Magneto opened his hands, coldly contemptuously said, "I don't know that the sky is high and the earth is thick. I thought I found someone with extraordinary strength as a backer. You need to know what the power of mutants is." Chapter 111. Snapped. 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 Su Mo patted and applauded, looking at Magneto with his abyss-like eyes. The corner of his mouth raised a slight curve, and he said, "Well said, mutants are really powerful, too powerful, but Magneto seems to have a problem with your ability to understand." Su Mo gave the flustered Lorna a relieved look and asked her to stand farther away. Now it is obvious that reasoning is not feasible. Magneto's stubbornness can't be broken even by a good friend Charles. How could he, a person who met with a plain taste, listen to him? When did you come into being that I used Saitama as a backer? Is it because I'm just a pragmatic manga artist? Su Mo shook his neck, making a creaking stiff sound, and sneered. Magneto's complexion remained unchanged, showing everything with his expression. This is what the outside world thinks of Su Mo. From the perspective of SHIELD, Su Mo is less dangerous, mainly the blue-eyed white dragon, Saitama, and Ji Luosi. As for Jin Weian, this kind of manpower may be invincible, but rewards. A few missiles will do. As for Magneto, he knew less about the existence of blue-eyed white dragon and Jin Weian than SHIELD, and the metal on Ji Luosi was restrained by him. The inhuman existence of Saitama is indeed powerful, but Magneto doesn't think he is invincible. From the comics, Saitama can't fly. And he can control the magnetic field. In addition, there are many ways to restrain his bald head in his mind, so Magneto is not so simple to run to the door. Therefore, in the eyes of the world, Su Mo is a soft persimmon compared to others, and they can deal with it as long as they spend others. Magneto patrolled the surrounding area. It was a sparsely populated place. Before seeing the powerful bald head, there were only Su Mo and Lorna. The red tank takes Lorna back. The embarrassing saber-toothed tiger was too lazy to call. The red tank grinned and strode forward, his strong body stepped on the ground with big feet. Suddenly, he accelerated and rushed to Su Mo violently, as if he wanted to directly kill Su Mo from a small meat mountain-like figure. Although I don't want to do it, it's Lorna's business anyway. It's not good to trouble others. By the way, it's a taboo to underestimate the enemy. Su Mo waved his hand and said coldly, "The ISOs to the spring." Advertisement. As soon as the words fell, the surface of the red tank running under the feet suddenly cracked, and if a large blue pattern appeared, countless icicles and ice thorns spewed out like spring water from below. Bang bang bang! Many ice thorns hit the red tank, and the powerful impact made him unable to hold his heels, staggering in the ice spring, holding his head and protecting his body. Magneto is a little surprised. Is it possible that Su Mo is also a mutant because of his ability to freeze? He had never heard of it. Thinking of the previous words, the hiding is really deep enough. Damn it! The red tank roared and stepped down hard, the cobweb-like cracks spread in all directions, and the terrifying force caused the icicles to burst. Super Frozen Frostbolt. At this time, Su Mo waved his hand forward, and a large number of ice arrows burst out from the front surface and blasted into the red tank. The endless ice dregs fell from above, forcibly causing him to retreat more than 10 steps. However, the two ice bombings did not cause much damage to the red tank. Instead, he aroused his violent anger and directly ran into Sumo. However, the two ice bombings did not cause much damage to the red tank. Instead, he aroused his violent anger and directly ran into Sumo. The skin is really thick. After this trial, the ice modeling magic is still a bit weak in front of such a rigid face. Finally, I will try this trick. Sumo faced the red tank that was about to come in front of him, and did not panic at all, putting his hands together and pushing forward. The sky began to agitate, and the icy cold air filled the air, forming ice particles. Ice shape, silver world. Click click click, a touch of ice radiated from both hands to the front, and the moment of releasing it, it slapped forward like a surging wave. Just in the blink of an eye, the land blown by the cold air turned into a thick layer of icy ground, and the white piece was like a sea of ice. The severe cold enveloped this area, and the temperature of Villa number 2 not far away kept dropping. Saitama, who was addicted to the game and couldn't help himself, also shuddered. Why is it so cold? Jalasi looked at the ice ocean in the distance, and said, it's the master who is in conflict, but the master specifically confessed not to interfere. Advertisement. Saitama, who was still eager to try to go out, collapsed all at once and picked up the game console again. At this time, Magneto Akoko used the magnetic field to control the flight directly in mid-air, and the contemptuous expression on his face was replaced by solemnity. He looked down into the distance, the place had become an ice field, and the running red tank was frozen into an ice sculpture standing there. Magneto admitted that he underestimated this man. What a beautiful scenery, although the season is wrong, it's not bad to see ice and snow now. Sumo slid gently and came to the side of the red tank like skating, whispered softly, and carefully looked at it, and it was not dead. An ice prison was formed with a wave of his right hand. At the same time, the center of the ice prison was solid, and a layer of ice once again climbed onto the red tank and wrapped it tightly. After finishing, Sumo stepped on his feet lightly, breaking away from Magneto's consternation, stepped into the air and stood directly in mid-air on the same horizontal line as Magneto. It was also in the air. Magneto 990 couldn't see how Sumo managed to stand in the air. Go on. I'm not only capable of this. Sumo and Magneto faced each other and persuaded each other with good words. In fact, I don't really want you to beat Lao Zhongren. After all, it is Lorna's father. From now on, he will always belong to the family. Shut up, Lorna is my daughter, so I can't talk about you. Magneto gave a low roar, full of incomparable strength, and the surrounding magnetic force began to change suddenly, and a piece of metal behind him began to become sharp, exuding a dark black light. Lifting one hand, the next moment it directly tore the air, making a humming sound, turning into a stream of light and lasing towards Sumo. It's a good ride, but the location is not good enough. Feeling the air-breaking wind blowing in his face, Sumo held his hand like a lightning bolt, but the metal spike was caught in his hand for an instant. Buzzing! The magnetic field was continuously poured in to get rid of it, but it was directly frozen by the extreme ice ejected from Sumo's hand, and directly turned into ice sculptures in the wailing and then cracked into ice slag. Sumo stared at Magneto with helplessness and indifference in his eyes. His feet suddenly stepped on, and the air burst like the surface of the earth, making a sonic boom. Magneto, what you think is too simple. Chapter 112. There was a thunderous explosion on the ground, and Sumo disappeared directly after hearing a bang. Magneto had no time to think, his whole body shuddered, and he quickly let the pieces of metal form a sphere to envelop him. It's like a steel castle. However, it was just a dazzling one. The corner of the steel ball seemed to be bombarded by a cannonball and was kicked down, sliding down like a meteor falling to the ground. Sumo didn't stop his offensive. Magneto was too stubborn. Since he is a strong man, he should be enlightened by more powerful people. Shunpo flashed again and again, and the side of the falling steel ball appeared in an instant. Leaf Hurricane kicked it out, and the strong attack force caused dense cracks to bloom on the surface of the steel ball. Magneto was knocked into his head inside, and he was a little groggy, knowing that he might just fall apart when he tried it again. The thick steel ball slammed on the surface of the ice sheet, and all of a sudden cracks appeared in the ice sheet, arousing countless ice slag. Click it! After the steel ball hit the ground, it began to collapse, and the energetic Magneto was now embarrassed to come out of it. Then the steel ball splits into small metal iron balls like a remolding in the furnace, and it becomes extremely dazzling under the sunday. It seems that you are really not easy, but you can't defeat me. You may also be a mutant. It's better to join us. Magneto King opened his hands wide in the sky, and the magnetic force everywhere was echoing him, and the metal balls began to spin, making more and more piercing whistling noises. This place is not an urban area, and there are not so many metals that can be manipulated, but Magneto has plenty of measures. The pavilions, signs, and railings surrounding the highway, as long as there are metal components, are all extracted and disturbed around Magneto. A huge metal storm was formed easily, as Magneto waved forward. The metal storm carried the tide towards Sumo, and these smooth metal balls suddenly erected dense spikes. In addition to pouring down with a powerful impact, the spikes will break through the skin as long as they lightly rub them, reflecting the cold light of the sky under the sky. Such a terrifying metal storm was roaring loudly, rushing towards Sumo's thunderous attack. Head number 73. Double Lotus Kanghuo Falling Dot. A scorching flame spurted from Sumo's palm, and immediately enveloped the sky full of metal balls. The extremely high temperature directly melted and exploded, splashing out a stream of fire. The blasting sound is endless, venting the air waves, and lifting the smoke and dust. The 11th of Had. Add thunder and lightning. Advertisement. A bolt of lightning flicked on the metal balls, and in addition to speeding up the melting, it also rushed towards Magneto. In Magneto's sight, a metal storm was suddenly burned and burst by fire. Then an electric current followed the metal ball and turned into a thunder snake. There is no time to escape at all. The crackling electric current sizzled on Magneto King's body, and the whole person burst into black smoke, and his pale hair became pitch black and stood upright, falling from the sky again, and his face was full of panic like a folded wing angel. Everything is over, Magneto, you are too weak now. A sound of underworld came into his ears. Magneto felt severe pain in his abdomen. It was Sumo who suddenly stepped across the explosion zone and came to him at an unimaginable speed. His pupils shrank to a point abruptly, and he realized that he had no time to control the metal defense, and then he flew out like a cannonball. It smashed the surface ice sheet in an oblique downward manner, and rolled out a channel on it, and the ice layer collapsed again and began to disintegrate. Cough, cough, how is this possible? Magneto's pale face, he stood up with his body, coughed and spit out a few bloody waters, and his whole body was directly depressed. It's hard to think that he is the same person as he was when he first appeared on the stage. Lorna ran over in a hurry, wiped the blood stains with a tissue, and stared fiercely at Sumo who was slowly falling from the sky. Lorna ran over in a hurry, wiped the blood stains with a tissue, and stared fiercely at Sumo who was slowly falling from the sky. Sumo scratched his head and said softly, depressed, I'm already very careful, and in the end I just patted it. How helpless to say it, in his opinion, there is no use of strength at all, ninjutsu is useless, and didn't put it on others. The small lightning is only a small voltage, and the feet are kicking the steel ball boring. Cannot help but fight, he is also very helpless. But the Magneto King was suddenly frustrated and coughed up a stream of blood, and said angrily, if it weren't for the effective area, if it were in the urban area, you would have died without a burial place. This sentence is the truth in the eyes of others. In the urban area, there is inexhaustible metal, which is a metal wave. A steady stream of metal raw materials rages and destroys in the distance until it drags people to death and consumes them alive. This is his favorite way of fighting. Even if it was a character like Hulk, he didn't think he couldn't get rid of it. He has a good location and has never lost. But in Sumo's opinion, there are inevitably some babies at the bottom of the well, sarcastically saying, you have lost your geographical advantage, don't I have to keep your hands? When Magneto heard it, he wanted to go back. Advertisement. But when he looked up, a scarlet eye was watching him, and the unknown Goku in it began to rotate. Sumo he disdainfully said, look clearly, if you are not the old man, I would say hello as soon as I meet. Kamui. With a glimpse, a black hole appeared directly in one side of the ice sheet space, and the surrounding area began to be twisted and swallowed in. In less than a few seconds, a pit formed like a pit that had been dug out. If it's against a fast enemy, Kamui is slow to aim, but for mutants like a living target that mostly depends on ability but not speed ability, Kamui can drink water in seconds. For example, when Magneto appeared at the beginning, even if the metal wave was summoned, he flashed directly and cast Kamui at close range. Before Magneto could control the metal, the protective cover broke a hole with a fierce mouth. What will you fight then? This is reality, and it is not a replay game. The body reaction did not keep up, just playing a snake, and not really God. Spatial ability. You. Magneto suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, his hair was horrified, he was not stupid, how could he not know the situation at this age? If this kind of ability is released casually, it is simply unstoppable. At the same time, he believes that Sumo cannot be a mutant, and there is no such diversified ability of mutants. Lorna, Wang Zhao, ask you again and go with me. I need you to inherit my will. Magneto's hair was tousled, and Lorna's heart throbbed with his pitiful look. But Lorna, who had the same personality as Magneto, was stubborn and couldn't turn her head back, she could only shook her head. Okay, just like me, I just want to go my own way. In this case, I will say it again. If I say too much, I am afraid that I will not recognize my father. At this point, he couldn't tell Lorna to go back. The headless old man who was hammered by a junior, just wanted to go back and was very sad. Magneto was not angry, instead he hummed and looked at Sumo and said, protect her. After speaking, they turned around and left, making a cool and resolute look, but at this moment, a voice that made him very familiar came into his ears. It made him very upset, and his feet stagnated. Eric, why are you so embarrassed? Chapter 113. Eric, what are you doing here? Wen's and flat voice echoed in the air, unable to find the source, as if coming from all directions. Charles. Magneto King Eric turned and looked around, and saw a tall, hot curved piano pushing the wheelchair into the lawn slowly. There is also a man and a woman next to him. The man wears red glasses, and the woman has pale hair and darker skin. They are Laser Eye and Storm Woman. In the wheelchair, there is an old man with kind brows and a smile on his face. His eyes are wise and his eyes are very different from Magneto. He has a very strong affinity. Well, it's still a bald head. Another leader of the mutants, Professor X, Charles. Sumo raised his brows and looked at Charles with solemn eyes. As long as the mutant leader knew his abilities, he would not let his guard down. In the movie, Charles showed many times of heaven-defying ability, possessing the ability of telepathy and mind control. If he wears a brainwave enhancer, the whole Earth's thinking is in his mind, he can use his ability to modify anyone's thinking. It can be said that as long as he thinks and his mind moves, at least 90% of the Earth's creatures will die in a blink of an eye. This is not an exaggeration but a fact. Fortunately, Charles was a 600-year-old good man from the beginning, and he is still abiding by the principle he set, without the permission of others, he feels that he will not enter the brains of others. But in Sumo's opinion, this principle depends on self-consciousness. Charles often speaks through mind control. Did he scan his brain during the period? Will the controlled person know? Sumo doesn't want to deal with people with such telepathy ability. He is not a person who puts his life in the hands of others. Charles sat in a wheelchair, staring at Magneto with his eyes, and said solemnly, Eric, looks like you are starting to prepare other thoughts. Charles and Magneto are two mutant mountains, and almost their entire lives have been dedicated to the cause of mutants. Magneto is an extremist who believes that mutants should rule the world, and Professor X strives to live in harmony and balance between humans and mutants. The two have already known the path of each other's persistence, and they have been fighting secretly for many years. Magneto opened his mouth angrily, Charles, why are you here? Advertisement. Now he looked very embarrassed, the shameful saber-toothed tiger ran over and the Laser Eye and others stared at him. It looks like Ashby, Rick, you are still doing your own way. I'm not here to argue with you endlessly. I'm here just to cooperate. Professor X smiled, and Sheen pushed the wheelchair to pass Magneto, came to Sumo's body, and said peacefully, come here uninvited, and please see Xian, because I can't make an appointment with you in the comic company, so I have to come to visit. Oh, cooperation? Then come in and talk in detail. Sumo blinked his eyes and replied in a friendly manner. As soon as the voice fell, he stepped on it lightly, and the ice layer under his feet melted automatically, and the red tank also struggled to escape. Instead of rushing up in anger, but with a little fear, he returned to the back of the Magneto King. Professor X turned his head and said, Eric, come in together. This is a turning point for the future of all mutants. I need your help at this time. Magneto clasped his hands tightly, looking at the back of Professor X and the others, his uncertain face, and after the last gritted teeth, he followed in with Lorna's help. In the villa, Sumo, Magneto Wang, and Professor X sat face to face. The two people, such as Sheen and Saber-Toothed Tiger, did not come in but stood on the lawn outside. In the villa, Su Mo, Magneto Wong, and Professor X sat face to face. The two people, such as Qin and Saber-Toothed Tiger, did not come in but stood on the lawn outside. Su Mo, why did you ask people to come in? You are still two old men. When Jiali saw this, her face was full of dissatisfaction. The housemaid hates someone coming in and making a noise. While talking, he kept filling his mouth with dessert. Recently Su Mo discovered that Jiali's demand for energy food is increasing. As the defeated Magneto, he just snorted and didn't care about the little kid. I don't know that when Jiali was born, Apocalypse was still playing with snakes. And Professor X is staring at Jiali, his eyes are slightly squinted. In his mind perception, this girl exudes a terrifying energy field, which shows that this girl has a very powerful force in her body. Probably not under the Black Phoenix in the piano body. If this child is used by someone with a heart, I am afraid it will cause an unimaginable disaster. However, Professor X knew the purpose of coming and diverted his attention. Golly pursed her mouth and yelled, "I'm a bald head again," and staring at someone else, which made Professor X a little embarrassed. Then what do you do with me? Su Mo sat on the sofa and looked at Professor X Charles, and asked with a flat face, as the leader of mutants, I'm not here to chat. Advertisement: the Americans don't understand everything without going to the Temple of the Three Treasures, but they also understand what it means. Charles spoke in a hurry and said, presumably Your Excellency should know the situation of our mutants. I'll just say it straightforwardly. Our college hopes to establish a strategic alliance with you. Wait, Professor Charles, I heard it right, the word strategic alliance shouldn't appear on such occasions, I'm just a cartoonist. Su Mo chuckled. As a friend of the hero Saitama, you can no longer be just a cartoonist. Charles shook his head and said, we mutants need the protection of our allies and need your paintbrush. The second half of the sentence is the intention of the professor. For shelter or something, you X-Men want to be enough to deal with it, or secondly. Su Mo squinted his eyes and said with no expression, do you want me to draw a cartoon that promotes mutants? Comics can record a lot of factors. For example, Captain America is a comic created by the United States to deify Steve, and it is the first comic book in history. Magneto, who was paddling the water, sneered and sneered, humph, Charles, are you old and confused? Drawing books that promote cartoons can change the situation of mutants, which is simply too stupid. Charles was not angry, but continued, Marvel Comics now has branches all over the world, and sales are high and high. If you can get your approval, at least it can change among the teenagers. Then what can I get? I have spent enough money, is it a woman? Su Mo didn't easily agree, and his shoulders urged to play with the taste. The friendship between our mutant races, of course, may be too vain. Simply put, under the principle of not breaking the law, the X-Men can help you unconditionally. Charles exuded shrewd eyes, which shocked Su Mo's heart, and Magneto was also stunned. This is equivalent to packaging and selling the X-Men to Su Mo. It's a big deal. If I take back the previous professors who only want comics, it seems that it is really necessary to reach an alliance. I promised. Chapter 114. Trident Building. Hill rushed into the director's office with a flustered expression, and hurriedly shouted to Nick Fury, Director, there are two extremely dangerous people in the residence where Su Mo is. The non-chief who was drinking coffee frowned and asked, who is it? Although Nick Fury didn't send anyone to lurking under surveillance day and night, the satellite was always facing this area, and there was no movement from beginning to end. The computer screen on the table flashed an invisible flash, and if Alice inside knew it, she would definitely cover her mouth laughing. The first thing after her birth was to hack the internet, including all orbit track satellites. The current Skynet is like the Eye of Horus, looking down on this blue planet, as long as it can connect to the network is under its surveillance _. Except for the aerospace aircraft carrier flying in the sky using the small local area network developed by itself, including this Trident building, everything of SHIELD is under the control of Skynet. Nick Fury used satellites to monitor the suburbs, which has long been used by Alice. The scenes he saw were all Su Mo let him see. The eyes are all other people's, what are you watching? Magnetic King Eric and Professor X Charles. Bang! The coffee in my hand couldn't help holding it, and it fell directly to the ground and broke to pieces. The hot brown night body splashed on Nick Fury's feet. The slight burning pain did not make Nick Fury scream, he clenched his hands suddenly, and sighed softly, tune all the satellites over, and repeat the previous one for me." Then Nick Fury saw the battle between Magneto and Sumo. His diversified abilities made his face darker than ever. He still looked away. Sumo didn't let Skynet block, but showed it in full swing. This is to avoid some jumping off the beam. Cancel all previous actions against the comic company. He is showing off his fists. Nick Fury slapped the table viciously and issued a cancellation order. Sumo's danger level rose directly to the highest level. "Director, what should we do?" The mutants seemed to have started to change. Hill was a little worried. If it's just a good old person like Charles, Nick Fury is surprised, but nothing. After all, the professor's philosophy is there. Advertisement, but adding Magneto makes a big difference. He is an activist, and he can't wait to leave the human beings and then hurry up. Such a person can get on the line with Sumo. Nick Fury shuddered at the thought of this, and after a moment of contemplation, he opened his single eye and revealed a ruthless light. "Pass the news of Magneto's meeting with Charles to William Stryker, and be careful not to mention Sumo's involvement." When Hill heard this, he looked ugly and hesitated. "This, I'm afraid it's not good. Don't we SHIELD have always maintained a good relationship with Professor X? The X-Men has always been the target that the Avengers team wants to absorb, and Nick Fury has a long eye for this ability. I know what you want to say. It was passed to Stryker to let him find out for us what kind of relationship exists between Charles and Sumo." Nick Fury explained blankly. "But..." Hill frowned and was interrupted when he wanted to say something. "Well, all this is for the stability of the world, you go and implement it." Nick Fury looked at Hill's leaving back, shook his head secretly, and sighed. Hill is still too young, and even if discovered in this way, it will destroy the trust he has built with the X-Men. Hill is still too young, and even if discovered in this way, it will destroy the trust he has built with the X-Men. But now the situation is different. If Sumo and Charles and even the entire mutant group reach some kind of agreement, then his wooing will be in vain. That being the case, simply let people test it before making a decision. Nick Fury's eyes flickered erratically. All the projections in Villa Number 1 were restored in high definition. If Nick Fury was here, he was afraid that he would break his nerves and died on the spot. Because the projection shown is exactly what Nick Fury and Hill said. "Ha ha ha, Charles, this is the SHIELD that you have always trusted. It really laughs at me." Magneto looked at the three-dimensional projection of this scene. Nick Fury's awe-inspiring appearance made him laugh, and Lorna on the side was filled with righteous indignation. Professor Charles is quite prestigious among mutants, and he was kindly regarded as a donkey liver and lungs before. Charles's hands were even tighter, his eyes overflowing with helplessness. In fact, he didn't really believe in S.H.I.E.L.D., otherwise he wouldn't have to come to Sumo, but 1 yard fits 1 yard. This sudden abandonment deserves to be the leader of the United States. The consistent style of the layer. Advertisement 0. He turned his head to look at Sumo and asked, "Sumo, what is your purpose for showing us?" Just now Sumo was about to say something after agreeing, when a three-dimensional projection of a little girl appeared, and then he showed a meaningful smile, letting them see the scene. "Since we want to draw cartoons to reverse the world's prejudices, the empty pictures alone lack some convincing power." Sumo's face changed, the corners of his mouth raised a slight curve, and he paused and said, "In addition to the moving comics, there must be one thing in this world that will resonate with them and achieve a blend of reality and fantasy to further change their concepts." Charles didn't interject any questions and continued to listen. He originally wanted Sumo to create something like Jean. Comics like Hitomi and Ghoul has aroused pity among teenagers, and there seems to be a more perfect plan. Magneto feels a bit redundant, but I also want to know what Sumo's plan is. The original intention of him and Charles was for the mutants to have a better tomorrow. As long as it was beneficial to the mutants, he would listen a little bit. Although disdain. The mutants are now a mess. Although you two are supporting you, you will eventually get old. The people have always been opposed to you. In addition to the government's default, there is a danger that you do not have enough control over your capabilities. Even if Professor Charles opened the academy to make rational use of it, but this is not enough. It seems to other humans that you are still an alien. Sumo gave a simple and clear analysis, which echoed in the ears of the two of them, and Charles couldn't help asking, "What should I do then?" He understands all these words, but it's useless to establish an organization like the X-Men. The appearance of the X-Men Guran has become a temporary highlight, but you think about it, besides the mutants, Does the X-Men do other things that are only about humans? This. Charles wrinkled his bald face, thinking that it was true. Last time he went back to rescue the leaders of the countries at the summit because Magneto hijacked the mischievous and imaginary leaders to become mutants. Otherwise, it would be a different person. It's hard to say. More importantly, the media did not report the news that the mutants rescued the leader at all. So, are you interested in becoming real heroes? Just start with Hero Academia. Chapter 115. The three of them negotiated until midnight. The saber-toothed tiger, Qin, and others stood up first and then couldn't stand it and changed to sit on the floor. Later, it was Lorna who showed up and asked them to enter the side hall so that they would not lie down. Finally, when night fell, Magneto and Professor X walked out of the villa, and they parted ways after looking at each other for a while. Before leaving, Magneto looked at Professor X and said indifferently, "Charles, I hope this plan will succeed because he will raise the status of mutants, but this does not mean that this is my mind. Mutants can't coexist with humans at all." After speaking, Magneto turned and left with a wave of his robe. "Eric, I will prove that you are wrong," Professor X muttered softly, looking at the back of his close friend. Laser Eye Scott frowned and looked at the brightly lit villa, questioning, "Professor, why do you want to form an alliance with May 17th Sumo? Now he is being targeted by SHIELD Bureau." Laser Eye and others didn't know what Charles had talked about. He only knew that this time the interview would bring some trouble to the school. You must know that S.H.I.E.L.D. has always been the college's biggest middleman in government. It was also through S.H.I.E.L.D. that Beast was arranged to enter the White House and became the director of the Mutant Affairs Department. Without the umbrella of SHIELD, I am afraid that the future situation will be a little uncomfortable, and the executioner of Stryker has already looked at him. Thinking of Stryker, his heart was palpitating with laser eyes. He was not afraid of Stryker, but the shadow of his childhood made him feel uncomfortable. "I know, but it must be done. This is an opportunity to change the situation of mutants. Today's meeting made me more determined." Charles faintly looked at the fading night sky, decisively keyed. He didn't talk to Qin and others. In Sumo's plan, everything was true. Charles didn't want to say that this was just a chance for the X-Men to grow. Afterwards, Charles left here with 3 blank faces. In the villa, Sumo stood on the balcony of the large study room on the 2nd floor, looking at the people who were gradually hiding in the dark, with a funny smile. "Let someone come and pick up the lawn tomorrow," he said to Alice. "Let the Terminator TX change the comics, just copy the 2 books I specify now. The point is that it is best to copy this short comic in a few days, and move the other long one step by step." Sumo called up the system panel and projected all the pages of the screen, let Alice directly record it, and the powerful processing ability only saw it all in an instant. Alice turned to the end and couldn't help but stunned, with a puzzled expression on her face, and asked, "Behind it, there should be more." Advertisement under her scan, this book suddenly came to an abrupt end and just happened to be stuck at the peak of the plot, which was really annoying. "Ah, I haven't thought about this yet, I'll draw these first." Sumo gave a dry cough when he heard the words. He was serious. In fact, it is also depressed in the dark. This comic comes from a comic revision of a light novel, but the author wrote that the plot was tense and stopped writing when it was about to happen. Why? Playing mahjong? No, the rumor is that stocks have made a lot of money, so they live a life of mixed eating and waiting to die. As for novels or something, it's just a eunuch. Alice looked suspiciously at Sumo's serious nonsense face, looking a little perfunctory but also a little serious, and flipped through Byakugan angrily. "Sumo! Sumo!" At this moment, Lorna's voice came from behind, and then a very warm part was pasted up. Sumo suddenly became energetic and only felt that the back was attacked by 2 balls. HP -9999. "Sumo, I want to grab you from Gwen." Lorna hugged Sumo, resting her head on the shoulders of her beloved man, and groaned. "I don't seem to be aggressive, I really think I'm a vegetarian." Sumo grabbed backhand and slid Lonatai in front of him, with an indescribable expression on his face, hee. As soon as Alice saw her, she disappeared with a drink. "Hey, stinky rascal!" Sumo Shunpo stepped out again and again, appeared in the bedroom, threw himself and Lorna on the quilt, and after a while began to make a sound of unknowndomainname.com. The night is not deep, but the love is strong, Yuanyu hides shyly. In Villa number 2, Jaolua stared at Saitama, who was addicted to the game, with a grimace, and said, "Teacher. Advertisement, hey? What's the matter?" Saitama stared at the display without turning his eyes on the screen. With another flying operation in his hand, he said, "0. Teacher, it's time to go to sleep." "Oh, it's early, I have to beat him today." Saitama turned to look at the time, sighed. "Jiluasi. What can you do if you are single?" In the middle of the night, the White House, the President, the most powerful leader of the United States, put his hands on the table and said with a fierce look, "How sure is this plan?" "Mr. President, I have the confidence to win." Standing in front of the President was William Stryker, the Army Colonel, a strong man. At this time, his face was full of excitement, with a respectful look, like a soldier about to go on the battlefield to make a contribution. In fact, Stryker is not as respectful as it seems on the surface, the existence that the President can use in his eyes. In the afternoon, SHIELD sent a message that the meeting between the two giants of mutants was a godsend in his eyes. In fact, Stryker had earlier planned to let people go to the White House to assassinate the President, and it was the mutants who acted, so the furious President would definitely agree to his proposal. But now there is no need to do anything extra, and the President is obviously interested in this proposal. Perhaps it was the appearance of Saitama that made the President, who eagerly hoped to be safe, promoted Stryker to complete the so-called X-Weapon 0.1 plan, which requires a large number of mutant experimenters. After thinking about it, the President decided to say, "In this case, I can pass Stryker's plan, but I don't want to see any news about the shooting of mutant children on the next morning." As soon as the voice fell, Stryker directly patted the fierce chamber, hurriedly promised. His heart was extremely excited. After his son tortured his wife to death indirectly, Stryker wanted to send all mutants to the guillotine, including those ignorant children. Then Stryker walked out of the President's office with a wave of his hand, and a man stood by the window not far away. The two looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Nick Fury looked at Stryker, who was leaving, squinted, and walked into the President's office inexplicably. Chapter 116. Early next morning, the bookstore owner opened the door with a smile, and a large group of teenagers had already been waiting outside, clamoring for comics and magazines, but they hadn't had a single copy. The employees are quick to collect money and give books. The boss says that just selling Marvel comics can feed many bookstores. You must know that he could only eat dirt before that. At this time, the internet is a smashing weapon again, / The manga of The Crimson Eye was directly turned into a separate book and sold as the first volume. The first chapter was not included, as if the last issue of Friends Mank became a collector's edition. There is also a new comic book with it as a separate book, and its name is somewhat interesting. And the new comics on Juvenile Jump made the comic critic Edward smashed like chicken blood. With a swipe of his pen, he threw a tweet to the top of the hot list. The content is the same as the anti-registration cartoonist mentioned in the previous tweet, which convinced netizens. The comments below are as many as oceans, and they are all talking about two comics. The first plot has not been spread out and has not received much attention, and the setting of the second one directly blinds everyone's eyes. How much advertising fee did the mutant give Sue Mo? Poppy, did you buy it back? John stood next to the Street 09 with a face straight, and shouted to Poppy, who was bending over and walking on his back. Hearing this, Bobby patted his belly, and whispered, "I bought it. It's all here. This time, this company has published a lot of comics. Go back quickly, otherwise Teacher Scott finds that we are not going to be over in class." John and Bobby ran all the way over the wall back to school. The college does not impose a lot of restrictions on the students inside, but the access control is very strict. Charles strives to protect their safety and does not want ordinary people to be harmed because of the students' unconstrained ability. When John and Poppy returned to the classroom, it was just time to finish a class without any risk. After class, Bobby took out a new manga pamphlet. John leaned in quickly. The cover was a man and a woman. The handsome man was holding a gun at the cover, and the woman was a red-haired loli. Both of them were very happy expressions. It seems to be a more cheerful comic. At the bottom is the comic title, Black Bullet. The beginning of the story tells the background. In 2021, human beings were defeated in the war with the viral parasites protrusions and were expelled to a narrow territory, surviving with fear and despair. So far, 10 years later, under the power of the cursed sons of the girls who can control the gastroenteric virus, mankind has found the last hope against the monsters. The protagonist is Rintaro Satomi, one of the police who specializes in anti-intestinal animals, and he does many dangerous jobs with his partner, Nobunzu Ehara. Under the superb painter, the cooperation between the two of them in dealing with the monster and the words between them made Poppy and John laugh. Afterwards, after flipping through other comics that were being serialized, The Boy Jump appeared a new comic series. Advertisement My Hero Academia. The setting surprised the two of them. After the birth of a glowing baby, humans began to change, and humans with superpower were discovered all over the world. Over time, more than 80% of humans in the world have a power called personality. But what followed is that because of their personality, the number of people doing evil in the world has increased rapidly, and a new popular career hero has emerged, which fights crime and rescues others. They have received income provided by the state and prestige given by the people. The protagonist is named Midoriya Akohisa, who is a rare physique without personality, but his dream is to become a great hero. When he learned that there was no personality, he cried to the most powerful Ulumite on the display, "He is a super handsome hero, can I become like him?" Inside John and Poppy are mixed ginseng, both of them are sour and bitter. What is completely different from the comics is reality. How similar the personality and mutant ability are, but one becomes a hero, while the other becomes a proof of private capture. The Lord of Green Valley longs for a personality, but most of the mutants just want to be ordinary people. After John and Bobby finished the 4 words, they were silent at the same time. John asked in a low voice, "Can we be heroes? Real heroes?" After John and Bobby finished the 4 words, they were silent at the same time. John asked in a low voice, "Can we be heroes? Real heroes?" John hates being restrained by birdcage. He feels that Bakahao Shang in the comics is just like him, with a hot personality, strong self-esteem, and so strong. Both of them also hooked up with the flame. Bobby glanced at him, gave a wink of nothing to count, curled his lips and sighed. It is a fantasy that mutants want to be heroes. Just as John was downcast and annoyed that he was thinking too much, Charles's kind voice echoed in his ears. "We mutants can be heroes. Professor." I saw Charles controlling the wheel and pushing to the side of the two. At this time, the two of them realized that the original classmates had gone away, and they were the only ones left. "Professor, John thought they had been found sneaking out of the academy before, and he responded timidly. Charles smiled and asked, "Answer me, John, do you want to be a hero?" Advertisement. The tone was like a breeze, which made people calm down and made John face the problem. John gritted his teeth and said something in his heart, "Yes, Professor, I don't want to live like this anymore." "Then just do it." Starting from how to become a hero, our academy also has a hero subject. Charles patted the shoulders of the excited John and the stupefied Bobby, kindly and wisely glowing. "Let's go, finish the rigorous training first, otherwise you won't be a hero." A storm of heroes swept across all corners of the internet, and everyone was crackling with blood to express their views. It's another heroic theme of 077 that is different from the others. What is different from One Punch is described from the perspective of the student academy. I thought the comics company no longer produced comics with heroic themes, and it was different when it came out. It's great to watch. I also want to be a hero. How come there is no Seongying High School in this world? Prerequisite: you have to have the ability to be called personality. I envy mutants. According to Edward, this comic is completely described from the perspective of mutants. Don't be envious. There are a group of mutants who rescued the leaders of various countries at the summits of various countries, but now I have not seen them say any words of thanks. Damn it, is it true? Isn't the news reported that it is a terrorist attack? Did the special forces rescue it? The internet cafe you just connected to believe in the media and everything? They are all blocked. The Magneto who assassinated the president wanted to attack but was stopped by a mutant. Why do you know everything? Nonsense, because I was one of the mutants who blocked Magneto at that time. All of a sudden, the comment quieted down. Chapter 117. Suemo, who hadn't been out all day, got up lazily and walked out of the balcony to look at the sky at dusk again. Lorna started fighting with him 300 times last night and didn't rest until this afternoon. In addition to having powerful abilities, mutants also have physical abilities far beyond normal. What do you want? Luonami's tired voice came from his ears, and this pretty face full of delicate colors made people wonder. Sumo's abyss-like eyes looked towards the sky, and said with a soft smile, "It is estimated that Stryker has already started to act. Lorna, are you going? Of course, I'm going to grab Striker with my own hands and execute him. As Lorna spoke, her hair slowly floated, dark green began to replace the emergence, and a coin floated in her hand. Lorna now has the attitude of Magneto. Then Lorna got up and got ready, while Sumo called up the system panel and sorted out her previous items. There is only one item fragment, the Time Machine Fragment X1 from Doraemon. Sumo has never been sure whether it can be used in Marvel Universe if this is all together. After all, the apology bug is only half of the effectiveness for Thanos, but the gem of Marvel Universe should be in the hands of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. A little time fluctuation, this female bald head is afraid that she knows everything. Other items include reconstituted flashlights, rabbit-changing biscuits, shadow scissors, and stone ghost masks. The first three are from Doraemon, and the shadow scissors can cut the shadow and turn it into a dark entity to obey the original body, but the longer the time, the status of the shadow and the original body begins to fall. The stone ghost mask is from JoJo. After wearing it, it can stimulate the potential to become a vampire, and it can be inlaid with Super IG Redstone to evolve into a perfect creature. This perfect creature is extremely powerful in JoJo's world, and Sumo's eyesight reaches the level of an astronomical telescope. Does Marvel Universe have IG Redstone? Sumo scratched his head. This kind of crystals can reflect hundreds of millions of times of light, and maybe Marvel also has stones that can radiate from one point as long as the amplitude is increased. Let Alice look for it. If not, this mask will be a bit tasteless, and the previous shadow scissors can't cut themselves, they need to be used properly. It's like the little apology bug used to deal with Thanos before. Sumo brought up the skill panel by the way, and the skills displayed by him were simply a column. Active skills: Vaccine Lightwave Ball LV3, Shunpo, Rukia Kid, 3rd Generation Ninjutsu, Kakashi's Mangeki Sharingan, Gray's Ice Modeling Magic, Ashura Mode. It's a hodgepodge. Sumo touched his chin, and said secretly, there doesn't seem to be many chances of getting off the court, it's a little mixed. Wait until the malfunction is activated, and you will be able to specialize a few things in the future. Yu Guang saw that the fan value had reached 300 million. It is totally incomparable with before. The first reason is that branch offices are located in major cities around the world, comics have no borders, and the base is more. Many people think that One Punch Man, Tokyo Ghoul, etc. should have different styles in Europe and the United States that are uncomfortable for the public. People who think like this are often divorced from reality. For example, One Punch Man once ranked 3rd in the previous American Amazon Manga of the Year list. In front of them are The Sandman and Star Wars, 2 national-level masterpieces of the United States. In front of them are The Sandman and Star Wars, 2 national-level masterpieces of the United States. A short and medium non-American manga is ranked 3rd. Do you say that there are different styles? You say the aesthetic is different? Not to mention that Naruto has the 2nd largest sales volume in Europe in the world. The mainland Daxia sells less than the United States but only ranks 4th. In 2006, it won the Most Popular Comics Award in the United States. Don't they understand what they bought as paper? This is that comics have no borders, and people all over the world feel the same about their spiritual contents. The second and biggest reason is that the appearance of Saitama has further stimulated the sales of comics, and people can't help but find out what is in the comics. Institutions like SHIELD have almost one hand studying the solution all day long. The system draws 100 million, and 200 million don't move. Sumo is now rich and wealthy. If he is not waiting for them all, he really wants to draw all of it. There must be a lot of things that exceed the release of comics for 100 million, even if it is a bit expensive now. Congratulations to host, get the 2-color haki of the red-haired Shanks, the captain level full set of Kid, Sage Mode, Doraemon Shards X2, Mikasa Shards X2, Attack on Titan, the essence of the 3 heroes, and the outerwear of JoJo, Tajmi's scabbard, Kakashi mask, straw hat. Several white lights formed a sphere in front of him, but Sumo's face was a bit dissatisfied, and the unprecedented investment of 100 million fans was only so small. Shouldn't it be 1 column so that he can't finish it? And the following ones can still appear in the 100 million lottery? Advertisement host, this is a probabilistic lottery. The system feels Sumo's unbalanced psychology. Sumo heard this, took a deep breath, and sighed, understanding is to understand, facts are always unacceptable. Sumo first put aside the next few useless items aside and sold them to Uncle Andy tomorrow. They were genuine. It should be able to sell for a good price. Redhead Shanks S2 colors Haki, Armed Color and Conquerors. Captain Kid, Head and Bakud including numbers 1 to 99, depending on the user's physical strength. Sage Mode, a state where natural energy can be used. In this state, natural energy can be used to greatly increase physical activity to increase attack power and defense. At the same time, natural energy can be used to increase physical attack range and perception. It has a great strengthening effect on forbearance, body, and illusion. Su-Mo is directly equipped with these three, and there is a very comfortable warm current flowing all over his body. Wang is good. In the panel, Rukia's Kid is replaced by Captain Kid. Sage Mode appears next to Ashura Mode, and it seems that they can be used at the same time. After sorting it out for a while, Su-Mo took 3 silver grey pills and found Jin Wuyan who was sharing in the basement, threw them over, and said, "The amount of 3 heroes, I think this vampire lord can no longer allow you to evolve." Well, now he is just serving as a dessert. After all, it takes a lot of time to find the corpse and live impatiently. Jin Mu took it with one hand with blood, and said extremely calmly. De Cooler, who was nailed to death by silverware, looked haggard, and shouted weakly, "Let me go, please." However, both of them ignored them and walked out of the basement. Jin Mu directly returned to the system warehouse for the next stage of evolution, while Su-Mo quietly waited for Charles's actions. 118th table White House. Charles was pushed into a conference room in a wheelchair by Scott. Laser Eye was blocked outside the door and had to stand alone in the corridor. After the presidential assistant delivered a cup of coffee, he whispered, "Please wait a moment." After speaking, he turned and left. At the moment the door was closed, small holes suddenly appeared on the surrounding walls and a large amount of unknown gas spurted out. The colorless and odorless gas melted into the air and quickly diffused around Charles. The professor's eyes showed light and did not move, knowing that this gas was not fatal to him, and as expected, he began to faint slowly. Charles didn't panic. If he had been calculated before, he would definitely slap the door eagerly, but this situation had long been expected. A woman walked around the corner of the corridor and shot the laser eye. Despite the quick return, it was too late and she fell into a coma. In the middle of the night, the secret base of Stryker, located under the Akalai Lake Dam, was welcoming batches of mutant children who were stunned by anesthetics, and they were put into cells by soldiers one by one. Why are there so many people? Anything else? After Stryker checked back and forth, he found that they were all children, and some young mutants were not among them. This is clearly unacceptable in his opinion. "Sir, everyone else was led by Wolverine to break through the tunnel." The soldier replied. 280 Damn it, it's almost. Stryker's eyes showed killing intent, and he clenched his fist against the wall. Before he used the name of the White House to invite Professor X to discuss the relationship between mutants and humans in the future, this leader really came to jump into the trap and was already in his cell. And several X-Men were directly distracted by him with the Blue Devil. After all, he used the military's aggressive arrest reason to make the X-Men have to protect the Blue Devil. As long as the school netted into half of the mutants, it was disintegrated. After venting, Stryker changed his mind and said, "But it doesn't matter, as long as you get the brainwave machine and use Jensen to control Charles, those animals will die in the hands of his professor." Jensen is Stryker's son, an extremely powerful mental ability, and the culprit in his wife's death. He has now been transformed into a tool. At this moment, the soldiers guarding the dam entrance felt something was wrong, and several flashes of cold light appeared in the dark night sky. Several dark metal steel bars turned into black light. Under the continuous promotion of the magnetic field, the tearing air directly pierced the guard in the blink of an eye. Pouch! Blood was spilled, and the alarm sounded throughout the dam. Advertisement: Lorna is like a god descending from the earth underneath a series of metal steps, and the dam gate is directly broken into pieces and floating around. A small metal tornado hovered in the air. Lorna opened her hands, and the sky full of metal snakes kept pouring into the dam following the manipulation of the magnetic field. She is really the daughter of Magneto. This ability is really terrifying. Jean waited for the X-Men to come out of the woods. Although Charles didn't say everything, it made them a little suspicious. This was enough to make them react, and by the way they also accepted the new member Blue Devil. Wolverine led the Icemen, Firemen, and the X-Men, and looked at Lorna's posture, shivering all over his body, but he suffered hard in the hands of Magneto. Why would Magneto's daughter help us? Wolverine couldn't help but wonder. The Storm Girl shook her head. "Kide, I don't know, I think the professor should know. After that, under Lorna's clear path, the group rushed into the base like a broken bamboo, and the whole world was turned upside down. Stryker didn't expect a little Magneto to commit the crime, and the bullets shot by the soldiers under his hand were all metal and they were used by Lorna's backhand. Stryker didn't expect a little Magneto to commit the crime, and the bullets shot by the soldiers under his hand were all metal and they were used by Lorna's backhand. No one can stop Lorna's control. His Admiral Yuriko is one of the X-weapon achievements just like Wolverine. But she collapsed and died instantly in front of Lorna, causing Wolverine to swallow. How is it possible that you are Magneto's daughter? Why have you never found you? Stryker lay down on the ground in embarrassment, surrounded by malicious mutants. He didn't expect this situation at all. With the help of Storm Girl's cryogenic freezing, Jensen's thinking was slow for a moment. Lorna turned the brainwave enhancement machine, BCDD, and Jensen was crushed one after another. Lorna said indifferently, because I have never appeared in front of you. As a mutant, Lorna has always tried to hide herself, even Charles and Eric don't even know about it, let alone Stryker. What do you want to do? This is the military base. You openly attacked here. It is impossible for the United States to remain indifferent. Stryker can only move out of the government's face, hoping to escape. It is precisely because of the military base that it is necessary to collect evidence. Charles was slowly pushed in the wheelchair, his wise eyes shocked Stryker. You do this deliberately. Yes, it seems that Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., also deceived you and didn't tell you everything. Charles directly controlled Stryker's mind, and Lorna threw out the coin casually, piercing her forehead as if she had killed the Black Emperor, and her life was gone. Lorna turned to look at Charles, and said flatly, Professor, it's up to you to fulfill your promise now. She didn't come to help Charles and others for no reason. All this is the alliance agreement between Charles and Sue Mo. Professor, what promise? Scott, who got rid of Jensen's control, was surprised and asked. A group of mutants is even more dazed, they are kept in the dark from beginning to end. Of course, from now on, you X-Men and the Academy belong to me. At this time Sue Mo swaggered in, followed by a few Terminator TX, and scattered directly across the base to search for various mutant experiment materials including videos. All the mutants showed horror and couldn't help shouting, Professor! Children, don't be afraid, because you will become real heroes in the future. Charles's face was kind, his gentle tone soothed their anxiety, and he paused and said, Do you want to be a hero before and want to back down? I'm still watching your growth in the Academy. Sue Mo did not continue to watch Charles enlighten the mutant teenagers, but asked Lorna, How do you feel? The long-lost force catharsis. It's very beautiful, as if sentient beings surrendered. Lorna scratched with one hand, and the surrounding metal directly formed various shapes. Lorna's abilities are very powerful. Before meeting Sue Mo, she was completely in an uncontrollable situation. As the practice time passed, she was able to control part of it. Go back, I think the President will state the White House's position on mutants tomorrow. If you post these information on the internet, he will be miserable. Then Sue Mo uploaded the collected video and signed plan directly to the internet, and Charles had no objection. Everything began to change here. Charles did not bring people to the President to seek peace like in the movie, but formed an alliance with Sue Mo and stopped playing. Chapter 118. White House. The major media entered this conference room early in the morning, and the President will make a clear statement on the issues related to mutants. Previously, the White House was indifferent. The current position will depend on whether the mutant registration bill in Congress can be passed. After everything was ready, the President sat in front of the camera with a friendly and kind smile, which is a basic skill as a politician. In fact, I have troubles in my heart. I just approved all Stryker's actions a few days ago. I didn't expect to receive the news and rushed directly to the street. There was no one living inside. According to SHIELD monitoring, the mutant leader Charles has returned to the Academy, and none of this indicates that the plan has failed. That being the case, the President had no choice but to assume that this had never happened. According to the expressions of interest groups in the past, he still wanted to confront the mutants with humans. In this world, ordinary people are always in control of power. If those superpowers with extremely terrifying power only do it alone, they don't care, but if they are in a group or a group of people, the top figures in the pyramid will be afraid and afraid. Once the number of mutants increases, it will impact the existing system and destroy vested interest groups. Therefore, it is necessary to encourage the people to be hostile to mutants at this time. Of course, as the leader of this country, it is impossible to shout kill, but to show that the country is threatened by mutants, and to be euphemistic. When the president was opening his mouth to start his speech, an agent suddenly broke into the door and leaned close to his ear and said something. The reporters in front found that the president's face was pale, and the white man had become black, and he was whispering for a while. At %G%, then the president got up with a slight smile, but everyone present could feel a trace of anger, and then the president walked outside without saying a word. At the same time, the more I thought about it, the more angry, and secretly said, "This waste, I can't help kicking the door open in anger." Bang! This sudden sound and behavior made the reporters at the scene a little bewildered. At this time, the mobile phones on all the reporters began to vibrate unanimously. He quickly picked it up and saw that surprise appeared on their faces. In their minds, it seemed that the president could not be re-elected this time. 5 minutes ago, a scene suddenly appeared on the big screen in Times Square. It was a secret base. Researchers in white coats were walking around. Just as the flow of people below wondered what this was, a scene that made them creepy happened. Advertisement. One by one, the children were dragged out of the cage, and they were carried onto the operating table amidst heartbreaking crying. The cute children who had gone down with needles were completely unrecognizable. There are also some young people who have been used to transform, and the pitiful and helpless expressions make all the viewers feel like a pain in their hearts. Despair, numbness, and hatred are the inner emotions of this group of subjects, and the viewer can feel it. Afterwards, the military figure appeared on the screen. A man with the rank of colonel often wandered around in the subject to look through, his face even more disgusting. "Oh my God, this is still a soldier? This is simply the devil, butcher," a woman exclaimed, covering her mouth. The United States prides itself on being the most advanced country in the world. In addition to its military economy, the Americans believe that advanced spiritual civilization is what they are most proud of. Just like the death penalty, they seem inhumane, so 12 states in the United States have abolished the death penalty. In their opinion, what happened on this screen should have occurred in the Nazi concentration camps of World War II, and the military's clothing judged it to be the current United States. This is simply a retrogression of civilization. Then the screen turned on again when it went dark, and a densely packed plan book with the title expounding what happened before. It is the mutant plan signed by the previous president and the X-weapon experiment approval letter. At this time, a heavy and vigorous narration came out. The Constitution of the United States gave them the right to be born equal and all freedom. It is a pity that they did not have it. They were deprived from the beginning. At this time, a heavy and vigorous narration came out. The Constitution of the United States gave them the right to be born equal and all freedom. It is a pity that they did not have it. They were deprived from the beginning. Why? Just because they are mutants. So where does the Constitution say that everyone is equal? As soon as the voice fell, the entire screen switched to the scene of soldiers raiding the mutant school, and Stryker showed a grinning expression below the camera. Then he said the words of Beast. Until the end of the broadcast, Times Square fell into extreme silence, and their hearts were pierced like a knife, like a picture of hell on earth. Among them, there are many people who support the registration of counter cases, and it is extremely painful. They are not collaborators. The original intention is to hope that the mutants will be supervised. 0. Advertisement. I didn't expect that domestic animals would generally do experiments, which simply impacted their 3 views. There was an uproar on the internet. In addition to an image appearing in Times Square, Marvel Comics forums were directly on top. At the same time, Matt in My Hero Academy is even more ironic in the following: this is just the pre-characteristic of becoming a hero, but it is actively abandoned by people who need to help the weak. It is ironic but bitter in reality. The following comments are even more noisy. All the indignation sprayed at the White House. This day, the number of names of presidents was the first to be mentioned to a record high. 0. These lovely people. Su Mo sighed as he watched the classic verbal abuse from every netizen on the computer. I think the White House and SHIELD are even more hostile to the mutants. Alice analyzed. Hate is hatred. They are heroes and don't rely on national income. As long as the mutant image is reversed, Charles is willing to do anything. Now show that the image of the victim is right in combination with the situation where many lowly are called the children of the curse in the pitch black bullet. Manmai has also seen Ghoul, and Ryoko's death has long buried this detonating bomb. You can think so much. Of course. Suemo walked to Villa number 2 and found that Saitama was not here for the first time. Where is Saitama? Jin Huiyan, who was watching TV, thought about Kaide. It seems that I went to a place farther away to see the supermarket with a big price reduction. Don't you have everything in the villa? Suemo was taken aback when he heard it. Yes, but he said that eating and drinking for nothing is not good, so he and Ji Luosi changed their costumes and went out. Jin Huiyan continued. Well, let him go. At this moment, Alice's eyes flashed through the data stream, and she interjected, Suemo, the satellite found a meteor falling on the Earth. Shield has already checked it out, and it looks like a hammer. Hammer. Far away in Mexico, Saitama touched the packet on his forehead and shouted fiercely, Who threw the hammer? Chapter 119. New Mexico town. It is remote and sparsely populated, but the folkway is simple. A vain supermarket is making a big price cut, and two people standing not far away have been standing still. Ji Luosi, do you think I will be recognized like this? Now Saitama is wearing a black wig and black-rimmed glasses, wearing casual clothes, and dangling salted fish eyes that looks a bit nondescript. On the side are golden double ponytails, small red ligatures, azure blue eyes, from the arm to the golden machine, the whole person looks full of heroic spirit. She is Ji Luosi after the costume change. As the metal terminator of the night state, it is not too simple to want to change. Ji Luosi replied blankly, Teacher, I don't think anyone can recognize it. Hey, that's good. Saitama couldn't help but said bitterly. He is worried about 070. As the suddenly popular hero Saitama, the whole world is noisy, with fans all over the place. A few days ago, it was an eye thief who slipped so much. Saitama didn't even dare to go to the streets. This is completely incomparable in the previous world. Nowadays, foreign imitators with shaved heads, beige uniforms and white capes walk on the streets of Manhattan from time to time. But the facial expressions are not dead fish eyes, and it's not right at first glance. Now that the turmoil has subsided, fans in Manhattan have returned to life, and it's okay to dress up and go out. The two walked side by side to the supermarket salesperson, and Ji Luosi said in a fluent local accent, Please give us 50 Mexican chicken rolls. 50. The saleswoman was taken aback for a moment, and repeated with a puzzled face, Sure it's 50. Yes, it's the 50 on the big sale. Ji Luosi pointed to the words on the sign next to her, nodding affirmatively. Only a big sale will attract Saitama to come all the way here, otherwise he will squat in the villa and play games early. But for the chicken rolls to cross the state, Ji Luosi didn't know what to say. The saleswoman smiled cordially, okay, please wait a moment. After speaking, she ran back, obviously not prepared so much. Saitama looked around boringly to see if there were other cheap things to buy back, but the unchanged price above made him angry. Although this world is a red to purple hero, there is no hero association in this world, which means that none of the heroes have any income in this area. The hero of this world is so miserable. Advertisement. That's what Saitama thinks. At this time, a stern middle-aged man walked in but found that the salesperson was not there, and a girl was standing there all the time, her eyes squinted. He quickly took out the gun and pointed at Ji Luosi and shouted, Hand over everything, otherwise you will not be able to save your life. Ji Luosi turned her head to look at the robber with a blank face, and said calmly, Now I can take the gun as it has never happened. Hey! Any robbery? Saitama came out from the side listlessly, and still swaggered. The gangster was nervous for a while and pointed his gun at Saitama, shouting, Who are you? Me? It's Sing. Cough, you can call me Chi Mu. Saitama also planned to report to her family, but found that Ji Luosi had been making her wink and quickly changed her words. I care who you are, get out the valuables quickly. The gangster hurriedly shot the two of them and shouted again. The saleswoman who was going to take the thing out couldn't straighten it out at the first hearing, watched from the gap, and called the police at the same time. Teacher, I'll deal with it, first pay the money to get the chicken roll. Ji Luosi stepped forward, and the saleswoman's actions couldn't hide her at all. When Saitama heard the wind under her feet, she rushed to the back and grabbed a box of chicken rolls in the saleswoman's astonishment, and then stuffed the money into her hands. When Saitama heard the wind under her feet, she rushed to the back and grabbed a box of chicken rolls in the saleswoman's astonishment, and then stuffed the money into her hands. Being an idiot. The gangster shot directly, shouting in anger. Da-da-da. However, Luosi had quick eyes and quick hands, and immediately grabbed the bullet in his hand, and threw a backhand directly through his body in his panic. He fell directly on the street and died on the spot. It's over, let's go. Saitama walked off the side casually holding the box, and Jilith followed closely behind. Who is this? Hero, haven't you heard of it? The saleswoman hurriedly stepped forward and looked at the back of the two, with a face full of confusion. On the street, Saitama gave the box to Luosi, took out a chicken roll from it and gnawed it, and muttered, "Will we be found?" He also wants to go here often to see if there are special sales. The discount sign above indicates that the price of fruits is reduced today. No, teacher, I have used electromagnetic pulses to destroy the electronic equipment in the supermarket. That's good. Advertisement saleswoman. Just when the two were about to run back to Manhattan, a space in the distant extraterrestrial universe suddenly became distorted, and suddenly two rays of light appeared, one large and one small, rushing towards the Earth one after the other. In the blink of an eye, a little black shadow came to the sky above the Earth, whizzing down like a meteor, and struck the surface obliquely. Boom! A loud, crisp, and muffled sound rang out on the avenue. What? Saitama's head was smashed by something, and the whole person stepped back a few steps and felt a little fainted. Luosi didn't have time to see what it was, and yelled in concern, "Teacher!" There was no time to react in her perceptron, and the teacher was attacked. Wait, I'm a little dizzy. Saitama propped up, the wig on his head was smashed and disappeared and turned into dust, and the small red envelope visible to the naked eye protruded above the bald head. Saitama touched the small bag on his forehead. It was a disaster from heaven, and he was smashed by people while walking. Seeing the stone hammer in the small hole at his feet, he yelled to the sky with anger, "Who? Who threw the hammer? Come out! I want to blow you up with a punch!" Saitama jumped angrily. He was attacked and he hadn't seen anyone. This was unprecedented for him. At this moment, Luosi slid through several 5.7 screens in her eyes, and found a trace of horses using Skynet's shared information database. She filled her out with righteous indignation, "Teacher, from the point of view of the satellite, in addition to a hammer, there is another person falling down. Maybe it is related to him. Go, I actually smashed my lovely hair, and I'll settle the account with him." "Teacher, you never have hair." The hammer on the side was lying there alone. Since Saitama had taken nearly 10% of the impact, it was now lying flat instead of being upright as planned. Asgard was extremely far away, and Heimdall, with a large sword standing on the Rainbow Bridge, had a dumbfounded face. It was the first time he had seen such a thick bald head. Chapter 120. The lightning flashed and the sky gradually turned grey, but Thor, the Prince of Asgard, was in the same mood as this weather, and looked very irritable. Continued cup. Now he drank his sorrows in the tavern, patted the table and drank to the bartender. "Thor, stop drinking, cheer up." The three astronomers on the side, Dr. Sylvig, Jane Foster, and student Daisy, were talking to Jane. The three of them discovered a peculiar astronomical phenomenon, and then knocked a big man out on the street. He rushed to the hospital and found that he was only bruised. When he thought it could be over, the man was full of nonsense such as "I am Thor" and looked very arrogant. After the big man realized that he was just an ordinary person, he drank like crazy. "Ahem, Thor can leave now, let's go home." Dr. Sylvig was dissatisfied with his female student Jane's fascinating attitude, and immediately wanted to send him away. "Go? I've just been expelled from the house." Thor looked up at the ceiling with a bitter face, his heart full of anger but nowhere to vent. Now he is just a 10 ordinary big man, with no supernatural power at all. Jane secretly Su Fangzin, this handsome man was deeply attracted to her, and said with concern, "Perhaps your parents were only angry for a while. By the way, you are here alone." Jane meant if any other family members came together, and these words made Thor's mind buzz. "My hammer, my Mjolnir." Thor quickly remembered that the hammer was not in his hand, and his father Odin had deprived him of his supernatural power, but it didn't matter if he got the hammer back, it was still Thor. It's true that Asgard's reckless man never thought about his divine power. How could the hammer be used for you? You know this hammer was given by Odin. Perhaps Thor thinks that taking the hammer back Odin will allow him to go back. When Dr. Sylvig heard this, the veins in his forehead were bursting out, and he couldn't help but muttered depressedly, "Siete, do you really think you are a Nordic Thor? Just do it if he wants to do it." "Thor, who is not sloppy, got up and wanted to find a hammer. As soon as he walked outside the door, a bald head with glasses and a blonde double ponytail came up facing him. Teacher, judging from the satellite trajectory and the street camera, this man with messy hair is the man who landed on the ground about the same time as the hammer. Luosi quickly pointed to Thor, who was leaving the house, and said, Skynet's ability is much stronger than SHIELD monitoring, and it is easy to find Thor's whereabouts falling from the sky. Oh, what's the relationship between you and the hammer? Of course, Saitama wouldn't punch him indiscriminately, so ask first, and then go one step further. Advertisement hammer? If it's a hammer that falls from the sky, it's mine. Thor touched his chin and answered truthfully. He who is in arrears in IQ didn't see the mess in Saitama. But the three astronomical people in the back can see that they are not good. It turned out to be you, your hammer hurt me, so if I punch me, you will spare you if you don't die. Saitama raised his fist fiercely and pointed at the small bag on his finger, unceremoniously. Although this man doesn't seem to be a weird person, he must be a bit of a level to be able to attack him. In the bloody battle, he was already hungry and thirsty. What? Are you too arrogant? I'm Thor. Thor was furious when he heard this. No one in the 9 realms had ever spoken to him like this, and spared him if he didn't die. This is trampling on his dignity as the Prince of Asgard. This is contempt for Thor. Thor can no longer care that he has lost his divine power, and the opponent seems to be just an ordinary bald head. With thousands of years of combat experience, he can completely kill in an instant. Thor can no longer care about his loss of divine power, and the opponent seems to be just an ordinary bald head. With thousands of years of combat experience, he can completely kill in an instant. Thor. Saitama was stunned. When he summoned Sumo, he said that there is a god in this world. Is the blonde man in front of him a god? Isn't this just right? A trace of enthusiasm began to flow in his heart, and Saitama was a little excited and ready to go for a big fight. Jane hurriedly stepped forward, stood in the middle, waved her hand, and said eagerly, Wait, is there any misunderstanding? Although the hammer belongs to Thor, he has never injured anyone with a hammer. It should be a misunderstanding. The doctor also stepped forward to discourage. They are different from people like Thor who can only think brutally, and they don't want to show up in a fight. It was a group of people in black who ran over and snatched the information, and then ran into a big man who was full of nonsense. Today, it is simply unlucky. Luosi is watching the changes. No, it is no longer a matter of misunderstanding and not misunderstanding. Since it is known as Thor, then it must have the strength of a god-level weirdo. Advertisement. Saitama was eager to try, and threw away the black-rimmed glasses, which was too an eyesore in the battle, and looked at Thor with excitement. Thor was stared at by the fiery eyes, and he couldn't help but shudder. And Jane's assistant Daisy was taken aback, staring at Saitama, even though the bald-headed clothes were casual clothes, but with the salty eyes and such a tone of voice, she also said weird people, covered with glasses and bald head, all revealing the identity of this person. One Punch Man Saitama. Saitama. You are Saitama. One Punch Man Saitama. As a maniac, Daisy rushed directly into the raging scene, yelling frantically, grabbing Saitama's arm and shaking it. Luosi on one side saw her forehead hurt. Saitama panicked and denied directly, No, I am not, my name is Mu. The other two were also taken aback. This is the bald Saitama. Saitama can be said to be a household name in the US, and is far more famous than Iron Man and other superheroes. After all, he blasted other big bosses with one punch. Jane immediately softened his legs and pulled Thor anxiously and shouted, He is Saitama, One Punch Man Saitama, you can't beat him at all. When these words came out, Thor was full of displeasure. How could it be his style that he was timid before fighting, put on a nonchalant face, and insisted on going up and FG him? Thor, don't be silly, Saitama once wiped out the nearly 100-meter street with a single blow. In Jane's words, Saitama punched Hulk half of his body, because most of the punches were punched in the air with a diagonal fist. Otherwise, Manhattan will be like in the comics, punching a mountain hundreds of meters into the tunnel. You know, when this episode was drawn, it scared SHIELD Bureau directly. No one will question whether there is an exaggeration, or you can verify it yourself. Ahem, is it true? Thor immediately reported a dry cough that was breathless, and a building nearly 100 meters away was destroyed? Hit his body that has lost his supernatural powers and don't play around. Although Thor has a touching IQ, he is not a fool after all. He still wants to go home to find his father. How could he be beaten to death? This kind of power can only be matched by taking the hammer back and becoming Thor again. Don't be ashamed first. Chapter 121. Thor was panicked, but his face was not weak in the slightest, and he said solemnly, "In this way, I now have lost my supernatural power and need to find the hammer to become Thor, so now I refuse all challenges." Perfect, Thor praised this witty remark. If you lose, you don't lose the battle. When the hammer gets in your hand, you still dare to show your bald head, and said in his heart. Like this. Saitama turned aside. It turned out that he was an ordinary person without strength, and the blood in his heart was suddenly extinguished. Seeing Saitama's dejected look, Ji-Luos quickly interjected, "Teacher, we know where the hammer is, just take him." "Yes, let's go, I know where the hammer is." When Thor heard this, his face was full of joy, and he patted fiercely and promised, "Okay, I will accept your challenge when I get the hammer." Jane and the others had to follow Saitama to the place where the hammer fell, and they also confirmed whether Thor was lying. It seems to be clear-cut. However, when the group of them reached the position where the hammer fell, a large group of residents were already there to pull the hammer, which was obviously in vain. Humph, how can these mortals can afford to pull up Mjolnir? It is simply whimsical. You must know that only the real Thor, that is, I can get it. Seeing this, Thor snorted disdainfully. Self-conceited, he never worried that the hammer would be taken away, but there were restrictions imposed by the Lord of the Nine Realms. Saitama flipped through Byakugan, and no matter who could pick it up, he would know if it was a mere fight when the time came. In fact, he didn't have much hope in his heart, just a hammer to become a god sounded too illusory. In his opinion, the so-called god is at least stronger than the pineapple head. Just as Thor strode forward, a group of people in black rushed out and hurriedly dismissed the crowd. In a blink of an eye, the cordon was pulled up, and it seemed to be a restricted area. Thor felt that his hammer was taken by maliciously, and he rushed over, but several agents directly blocked it at first sight. However, under the extremely terrifying combat experience, although the divine power is not there, the physical instinct still exists. Thor ran all the way, and the SHIELD agents who had not had time to establish the sanctuary were caught off guard for a while, and they were ordered not to use firearms, and he really broke into Thor's hammer. The sky is getting thicker, the sky is full of dark clouds, and the sound of muffled thunder comes from the clouds, resounding between the sky and the earth. Thor happily held Thor's hammer that had been with him for a long time, and his face was immediately dull with a lift. Advertisement. A little bit of drizzle fell on his face, as if shocking his heart again and again. Thor mobilized his whole body, trying to pick it up, but he didn't move like a magnificent mountain. The hammer that came with a beacon in the past can't be picked up at all. How could this happen? No. Father, is this the punishment you said? It is to make me an ordinary person who never picks up again. Thor's heart was like a knife, roaring and roaring into the sky, kneeling weakly on the ground, his eyes suddenly wetted with moisture, and his whole body was extremely decadent. This is Saitama? What does it have to do with this person? This time the leader is still exhausted, and Collison, who is behind the hairline, squinted his eyes, allowing people to watch Thor first, and strode forward. In front of Saitama. Hero Saitama, hello, we are agents of SHIELD, what are you doing here? Collison said very politely, and he didn't go around straight to the point. This is also the type that Saitama shows extremely annoying talk in the SHIELD information database. To be fair, Collison is also a fan, but he is just an ordinary fan, and will not make any overreactions. He has to be promoted and raised. After all, before SHIELD, several agents who overadored and loved the comic characters in Sumo's pen were directly pulled out for ideological reformation. Besides, Collison is a dead-shot supporter of Captain Steve. It's okay, it looks like he can't be Thor anymore. It feels like a liar. It's okay, it looks like he can't be Thor anymore. It feels like a liar. Saitama was full of disappointment and frustration. He thought there was a god, but he didn't expect it to be a fake. It was really disappointing. Jalasi frowned. During the scanning of the eyes and the sensory reconnaissance, this person should have nothing to lie. Is it a mental illness? Thor. When Collison heard it, he turned his head and looked at Thor, his eyes gleaming. Saitama, who had not found his opponent, turned around and prepared to leave, but at this moment Jane and the others ran over to tell Saitama that the men in black had snatched their information. In their opinion, the hero should be able to help them get justice back. Hey? Taking things back is what the hero should do. Saitama was taken aback, a little uncertain. In his world, the hero does not care about these. And Collison was a little nervous, for fear that Saitama would grab it back and quickly let people return the things. Of course they have been backed up. Advertisement things seem to be dusty. Saitama also feels bored, not interested in seeing what will happen to Thor, when he goes back home with G-Luos. But before he took a few steps, Saitama suddenly turned his head to look at a clearing, and the salted fish eyes kept looking straight. Jalasi asked puzzledly. Teacher. Shouldn't you step your legs and run back like a small motor? My instinct tells me there is someone there. Saitama pointed. What? G-Luosi's face changed. She didn't detect it at all in her perception, but since Mrs. Saitama said it was so sure. Loki, the second prince of Asgard. He was a little at a loss. He appeared using a phantom projection, but some people felt it. This magic has no offensive power, but it can be projected far away and has a full illusion that ordinary people can't see at all. In fact, his body is Asgard's immortal palace throne. It should be a coincidence, this dead bald man. Loki was not in the mood to pay attention to the bald head, and went straight forward to prepare Thor who would be demoted. However, the next moment Saitama walked directly in front of him and kicked it, which seemed to outsiders to be convulsed and kick the air. But Loki's whole body was furious. The phantom projection was made of magic after all. Even though he was invisible, he actually existed. Before his body is disbanded, the projection is an energy cluster, which will develop and dissipate when touched. At this time, the projection appeared in front of everyone, slowly dissipating from the kicked waist, and Loki wearing a black trench coat was furious. You! How dare you! Disrespect to God! Hey! God again, when is it so cheap? Saitama was annoying to death, and G-Luosi also kicked. Seeing this, Thor yelled, Rocky! He wanted to ask about Asgard's situation. However, it is a pity that Loki's projection has dissipated and ignored him. Collison only felt that things were getting more complicated and confusing, and his heart was full of tears. He was just an ordinary agent. On the throne of the Asgard Immortal Palace, Loki's eyes widened and his face was ugly and blue. He was treated so violently by a mere mortal. This was absolutely unacceptable to him, who was extremely proud and compared to a god. Just got up and walked into Odin's treasure house. At the end was a metal giant that looked extremely mighty. Chapter 122. Ohio, Saitama-san. Jin Wuyan rubbed his eyes, yawned, came out of the bedroom, and walked into the bathroom. Wearing pajamas, Saitama, brushing with a toothbrush in the bathroom, mixed speeches in response. Ohio, Mr. Jinmu. Saitama, what did you buy last night? Jinmu asked while washing. That Saitama and G-Luosi came back late last night. He had already gone to sleep. I bought the chicken rolls, and now there are 40 of them in the refrigerator. It should be fine. It feels quite delicious. Saitama said with a listless face. Last night, he kicked Rocky's magic projection, and ran back all the way when he felt boring. Life is really ordinary, this world. Saitama still meets the next weird person in the original world every few days, but here is very idle. If it weren't for Sumo's words of God, he wouldn't know what to do. Jin Wuyan didn't know what to say, and it was enough for the chicken roll to cross the state. At this moment, G-Luosi walked in and shouted, Teacher, do you want to go today? Of course, today is a big fruit sale. Saitama hurriedly finished it, put on a costume and went out with G-Luosi. Jin Wuyan looked at the backs of the two of them leaving. The whole person was plunged into petrification, and secretly said depressed, Isn't it? Is it just necessary for a big sale? New Mexico. After witnessing the incident last night, the 007 Bureau of S.H.I.E.L.D. reacted to this incident and some large connections attracted Nick Fury's attention. After inquiries, Coulson told him desperately that this involved alien civilization. Under Asgard's management, the Earth was once called Midgard and belonged to the Nine Realms. This Thor might really be Thor. After all, Loki's magic really appeared. So when such a mythical character came to the Earth, S.H.I.E.L.D. should deal with it like this, and the non-chief felt extremely troublesome. However, the non-chief still asked Coelson to be nice to Thor and Jane and the others. In fact, what Saitama did not expect was that as soon as his front foot was gone, Jane's 3 back feet were taken in. The question about Thor is also about Saitama. Advertisement. I have to say that SHIELD is such an overbearing institution. Jane, are you all right? Thor and Jane quickly got together and blatantly spilled dog food in front of everyone, making Coulson angry. Coulson coughed ignorantly, then interjected, "Ahem, Lord Thor, we still need to ask some questions. Although what happened last night made us feel incredible, we still need to check it." SHIELD has started a new round of busy early in the morning, cat. In addition to asking questions, there is also a testing hammer. Since it is an alien product, or a fabulous thing, SHIELD is a bit zealous, and Thor can't handle it. It might be okay to rely on technology. If Odin knew what they were thinking, he would definitely give a look of contempt. Don't look at Asgard's clothes in the style of the last century, but it is a civilization of powerful magic and technology that has thrown the earth away. Some high-ranking leaders such as the Fae have been misplaced, failing to see where their status is. Maybe they know it, but they are somewhat lucky. As they acted, the cloudless blue sky of the town began to become clouded and muddy. The huge Uzumaki lifted the clouds, and the huge colorful beam of light suddenly burst out from it and crashed into the surface. The huge Uzumaki lifted the clouds, and the huge colorful beam of light suddenly burst out from it and crashed into the surface. The billowing smoke stood up like a tornado, flying sand and rocks, and a strange giant with a huge body of metal and silver appeared in the confusion of the residents on the street. It is the greatest treasure of Odin's treasure house, the Destroyer. Above Asgard's throne, Loki stared at the earth with a gloomy face and said, "Ignorant mortals, this is what irritates me." Heimdall on the Rainbow Bridge frowned, and 4 warriors ran from behind and shouted, "Heimdall, let us down, Loki is already crazy." After some ideological struggle, Heimdall's heart froze and went against the King Rocky, who was on the surface, and passed the 4 down with the Rainbow Bridge. Upon seeing this, Loki gritted his teeth and yelled, "Betrayed me one by one, okay, let's go to death with Thor." The destroyer was remotely controlled, it seemed to be sensing something, and he ran towards one place with his huge body. SHIELD Bureau centered on Thor's hammer, and the camp it established received the news immediately and entered an emergency combat state. Rumbling. The earth was turbulent like a beast rushing, the destroyer rushed all the way, and the robots made of silver and white metal were rampant, and the buildings along the way were smashed to pieces. Advertisement. SHIELD agents fired collectively in front, but in front of such a powerful face, they were scum, and they broke through the line of defense in a blink of an eye. Seeing from a distance, the metal on the destroyer's body after Thor began to fluctuate like a fluid, and then red light circulated in the body, quickly converging on his hands. A beam of violent and terrifying energy gushes out directly, bombarding the place where Thor is. Bang! The sound of thunder on the ground exploded, and the beam of light shifted midway and directly bombed not far from the side. "Thor, here we are." It was the 4 warriors of the Immortal Palace who came at the very moment, and it was the super strong man Wursta who spoke. The axe in his hand was thrown directly and hit the destroyer's arm, forcing the angle to deviate. "Are you helper?" Coulson asked Thor with a sullen expression. "Yes, it's my friends, but they can't beat the destroyer. He is the armor of my father Odin." Armor. Coulson's impression of the armored armor still remained on Stark's Iron Man. Obviously, this armor should be much stronger. Yes, it was made by the best craftsmen in the Fairy Palace. Father, Zeus, and some other gods transferred part of their power to this destroyer armor. Thor took Jane and fled to safety. Bien explained to Coulson, "It can be said that the destroyer possesses the power of a god, but the one who controls it should be Loki. If I guessed correctly, the bald head angered him last night, and Rocky seemed to be dissatisfied with me, so I sent him down." While talking, Thor and the 4 warriors of the Immortal Palace saw it, but their words surprised Thor even more. His younger brother actually took advantage of the emptiness and tried to usurp the throne. Thor's heart was like a knife, and the feeling of being betrayed by his younger brother was really fragrant. "Who attacked me again? There's no end to it." Saitama's roar came into their ears, and everyone heard the reputation. It turned out that a beam of light exploded directly next to Saitama. This time Saitama could feel that, apart from anything else, he held a box of fruits and hid on the ground, shouting to the surroundings. "Teacher, the source of the attack is this robot." Jiluosi was very keen to catch the source of the attack, and the destroyer not far away was killing him. After a pause, he said, since I have dealt with the teacher, I can't ignore it. As soon as the voice fell, with a boom, Jiluosi rushed out. Saitama, who has been itchy by the mobster, hey. Chapter 123. The four people in the fairy palace resorted to all their strengths, and seamlessly used their superb fighting skills to produce tons of damage. However, in the eyes of the destroyer, this was only a reduction in HP. Soon, the four of them were defeated and scrambled like SHIELD agents. The extremely high-temperature energy rays were frequently swept out, and the terrifying energy explosion caused a raging fire. For a while, smoke billowed over the small town, the fire blazed into the sky, and all the residents rushed and screamed. Seeing this, Loki, who was in Asgard, couldn't help laughing. His face was full of evil smiles. That's it, these mortals never knew the power of gods. His eyes are full of indifference, disdain, and arrogance. Just when everything was helpless, a plasma cannon hit the destroyer directly, and the terrible destructive power made the indestructible armor begin to sink in and then exploded. Loki was taken aback for a moment, and became angry. Said, "Who is it?" The destroyer turned his head, and through the expressionless icy mask, Loki saw two people who made him furious. A bald head and a young girl are the two who kicked his magic projection away. Kill them! Loki with a hideous face gave the order to kill. Before the destroyer could take action, Jiluosi burst into a sudden violent lightning, kicked out with her right foot in midair, and a powerful pusher on her heel suddenly broke out. Buzzing! The sound was agitated, and in a blink of an eye, Jilith kicked the destroyer fiercely. However, the body composed of silver-white metal strips such as bandages could not get a single inch by just pressing it down a little bit. Then the destroyer quickly shot out, clasped his foot, grabbed it, and threw it out. This is... Jiluosi's eyes widened, and nothing happened under such a terrifying impetus. As soon as Jiluosi adjusted her figure to the ground, a blast of golden light energy came like lightning, and the air was scorched and creaked. As a robot, Jiluosi will never show the color of panic. Under super calculation, she put her hands together, and the thick silver mirror that changes like a fluid is oblique to the front. In the next instant, the golden light energy hit the mirror shield straightly. Some energy was refracted and overflowed, but most of the energy poured into the mirror. Clicks, clicks, clicks sounded, and the dense bead-like cracks instantly filled. The mirror shield shattered directly, and the energy pillar suddenly slammed into Jiluosi's body like a broken bamboo. Rumble. Advertisement immediately afterwards, the explosion soared into the sky, and the residential houses suddenly became fragments and sputtered out like a stream of fire. She's dead, right? Saifu of the four immortal palaces couldn't help asking. The battle happened so fast that they were too late to react, so they could only exclaim now. No, as far as I know, this level is not enough to be fatal. Collison frowned and issued instructions to the communicator in his ear to let the satellite aim here, doing his best to gather the strength of both sides. No matter who wins or loses, it is invincible for S.H.I.E.L.D. Sure enough, a flame-filled person walked out of the ruins. The body's surface was burned on the verge of collapse, and there was a faint silver-white metallic luster under it. The entire skeleton of the evil cavity was severely distorted and deformed and sunken in, but it was slowly corrected at a speed visible to the naked eye. The next moment, the body's surface began to exude a cold low temperature spreading across the body to extinguish the flames, followed by the skin's fluid-like structure and regeneration. For a moment, Jiluosi stepped forward as well as before, the sonic boom kicked behind her, and the whole person turned into streamer to launch an offensive again. However, the destroyer watched the changes quietly, and the metal in his whole body slightly changed, and his shot was lightning fast to hold Jiluosi's fists once again. The power is far stronger than me, the speed of action is not as fast as I am, but the instincts are surprisingly strong. A powerful robot should only control the five scums. Jiluosi was in the close collision of the destroyer, and the computing library shared by Skynet quickly calculated, only a few seconds through these few fights to analyze that there is a rookie behind. But with super resilience and such a high concentration of unknown energy, the odds of winning are not very clear. But with super resilience and such a high concentration of unknown energy, the odds of winning are not very clear. Even so, Jiluosi would not back down at all. Boom boom. Jiluosi's whole body turned into weapons, and her elbows, arms, feet and even her head began to fluidize into chainsaws, electric knives and warhammers, which fell on the destroyer like a shower. The destroyer had ripples all over his body like the ripples of the lake, and these attacks could only be regarded as painless to him. Boom! The gap between the bandage-like metal strips of the destroyer began to widen, and the fire energy gushed out from the gap between the whole body, stirring up the air, and forcing Luosi to fly out. 0. Luosi, who flew upside down, stepped on the air and rolled to the ground to stabilize her figure. Scanning her eyes, she found that the destroyer's face contained an unprecedented energy index. Hastily stepped on a lunge, lowered his waist slightly, and pushed his right hand forward. The gold edge marks on his arm began to flow, and the energy core began to pour into the 6 spouts formed on the clenched fist. Advertisement: burn the cannon, fire it. The fierce fiery red energy flow surging violently blasted directly to the destroyer. And the face mask on the face of the destroyer in front of him opened to reveal the hollow darkness. In less than a second, the golden energy swirled, forming a pillar of light that exploded towards Luosi. 1 red and 1 gold, with the center of the two as the boundary line. The chaotic airflow has been set off before the energy collides. Bang! Deafening, the explosion resounding between the sky and the earth, like a small smoky mushroom cloud transpiring in the center, the flames rushed into the sky. It seems that they are evenly matched, but a golden light appeared in the billowing smoke to declare to the world who is more powerful. Luosi seemed to have expected it earlier, and directly erupted and pushed the flame to sideways to avoid it, and Jinzhu lashed fiercely into the horizon. Luosi only felt the fierce mouth empty for a while, and looked down. Hold a grass! Where is my appa? The 2 big headlights were directly obliterated. Luosi really wanted to cry, but as a robot, she had no tears or gasoline, so she could only flip sideways. But at this moment, Yu Guang felt the destroyer who appeared suddenly, and secretly said, "That's awful." Boom! With 1 punch, the destroyer slammed the overturned Luosi to the ground, forming a hole full of cracks. Loki didn't let it go. He could see clearly the previous recovery, and directly let the destroyer's face release a shattering beam again. The golden light flickered and the space oscillated. At such a close distance, if Luosi was hit, even the metal of the night state would be completely destroyed in an instant and could no longer be constructed. What to do? The members of the Immortal Palace were a little worried. They also thought of being a powerful helper and stepped in. Die! Loki's mouth moved, exuding a strange smile. The golden light energy exploded and hit Luosi in the pit directly. Chapter 124. One hand directly resisted the golden light energy and then suddenly lifted from bottom to top. The sound of hit was endless, and the surging energy poured out and bombarded the palm of the hand, but it was like a sky barrier. Loki's face was full of horror, so scared that he jumped directly from the throne, and shouted in shock, "How is this possible?" Saitama raised his hand and slammed the destroyer's face directly, with a bang. The destroyer's golden light became shorter and shorter, until it was bent on the mouth of the mask, and then the metal strip at the upper end of the mask was directly sunken in, twisted and deformed, and the neck was directly bent very exaggeratedly in the right direction. The violent impact exploded from diagonally downward to the diagonally right side, and the neck began to bend, followed by the metal body, and the huge body twisted like twists. The destroyer suddenly flew out like a cannonball, spiraling out of the 950 in midair, and smashed into a living room fiercely. The flat and short house was fragile like a tofu flower. Under the collision of the destroyer carried by the powerful impact, it crashed into pieces in an instant. Countless rubble rolled down and buried like a shower. The 5 people from Asgard were stunned and horrified. Sif asked in a daze, "Thor, do you know him?" When Thor heard this, he shook his head after hesitation. I yelled in my heart, fortunately, there was no fight at the time, but how did this man become so powerful, like a god? Luosi, are you okay? Saitama knelt down and shouted into the big hole. Luosi's head slowly straightened, and the metal of the night state was ashamed of it in this battle. She recovered in 2 or 3 strokes, and said somewhat disappointed, "Sorry, teacher, I failed." "It's okay, just become stronger next time." Saitama waved his hand and said indifferently, "Teacher, look at your hand." Luosi suddenly found out, surprised. When Saitama heard the words, he raised his hand for a moment, and there was a light red burn-like wound on the palm of his hand. There was no blood flowing out of the night, it was just a layer of outer skin that was burned, but this was enough to make Saitama's eyes shine. How can this bald head be so powerful? Loki held Odin's scepter tightly, and his mind rushed through his cognition like waves. Shouldn't the Midgard people be ignorant, weak, and kneel at the feet of the Asgard? Advertisement. This is impossible. Absolute. Loki woke up from a brief stupor, narrowed his eyes, and glanced at Thor, who was on the side. His goal was not to fall into a meaningless battle. Only the elder brother Thor died, leading the frost giant into Asgard, and then he made his debut to kill the king of frost giant Laufey in one fell swoop to achieve the throne of the savior, the king of the palace. In this way, his lifelong wish was realized, and when the time came, he would look back and clean up the bald man. Brother, please go to death, only I am the well-deserved king of Asgard. Loki revealed a murderous intent. The destroyer came out of the ruins, his footsteps were slightly stagnant, and the majestic energy surged like a tide, and a scary energy ray erupted from the pitch-black hole. Everything along the way was turned into ashes, and the after-waves of hot energy on the concrete surface also melted into a blazing flame channel. The complexions of the 5 Thors changed drastically, and the terrifying temperature rushing toward them made them unbearable. As long as the next moment, there would be no scum left. Tor. Jane rushed to this side like crazy at this time, she was lost in love. Thor turned his head to look at Jane, his mouth was too late to open, his eyes filled with nostalgia, and the next moment his nerves broke. Thor turned his head to look at Jane, his mouth was too late to open, his eyes filled with nostalgia, and the next moment his nerves broke. A golden beam appeared beside Jane, an energy beam sprayed by the destroyer's hand. A triumphant smile appeared on Loki's face, and he sarcastically said, "Since you care so much, then we can go to death together." Saitama was a little confused, so he just shifted the target. "Hey! Prepare to run to the current hero, although he still won't give money." Jawlasi's eyes slid through the data stream and said, "Wait for the teacher, there is a high energy response." As soon as the voice fell, Thor finally understood the meaning of guarding at this dying moment, and the whispering voice of his father Odin heard in his ears. "Pick it up, Thor." Like instinct, Thor subconsciously stretched out his hand, and a hammer with lightning screamed from the sky, making a sound of breaking through the sky, falling from the sky, and the handle fell on his palm. Crackling lightning crashed from the sky and clouds, and Thor turned into a flash of lightning in the bright and dazzling eyes. Advertisement. The thunder light flickered, tearing the air at an extremely terrifying speed, screaming harshly, and hitting the golden beam. The unstoppable Thor's hammer greeted him, tearing apart like a cloth strip, and came to the destroyer in the blink of an eye. Boom! The entire surface was shaken, and the destroyer was immediately shot out and planted into the previous ruins again. "It's strange that I didn't find out how this energy appeared. It appeared out of thin air." Jawlasi's scanning eyes frequently issued question marks, and said in surprise. Saitama pointed to the metal hammer in Thor's hand and asked, "Hey, he has picked up the hammer, is it Thor?" "Yes, teacher, in Norse mythology, this man named Thor now resembles Thor's description. The current Thor is simply a big change, wearing a red cloak and armor, and the messy cloak's hair seems to have been shampooed and clean and knotted, and his whole face is red and vigorous. Rocky, your conspiracy will not succeed, I will teach you personally." Thor yelled to the sky, but he was a bit cruel. The brother was going to kill his brother, but the brother just said to teach him a lesson. The destroyer stood up, bursting into the sky with energy fluctuations all over his body, creaking, and once again a horrible beam of energy burst out of the dark mask. Just as Thor took the hammer back and threw it out, a bald head grabbed his lens and blocked his offensive line. 4.4 is great, the metal weirdo took me a punch. There was a slight excitement on Saitama's face, and Kakuzu's mouth was about to CK up. The moment he took the mask before, his hand that could not even be hit by a pineapple head was burned. This means that this metal monster is definitely not the only strength, there must be greater strength that has not been shown. Jawlasi worried, the teacher is afraid that he will be disappointed. This machine is not controlled by the original owner. The previous burning is probably just the armor itself subconsciously increasing the power. And this kind of power is difficult to appear a second time under the control of others. Chapter 125. Buzz. The surging golden energy forms a bridge across the sky and the earth, and the space along the way is slightly distorted, and everything will be destroyed in front of this energy. The destroyer's most powerful weapon is the smashing beam emitted from its face, which can smash almost any substance. But it also depends on people, if Odin can do it, Loki's power is probably less than 30%. Saitama squeezed his fist abruptly and shook it out, which looked slender compared to the huge golden beam of light. Normal punch. The fist wearing the red glove hit the golden beam of light head-on, and there was no stalemate. Instead, the blast wave directly tore the beam of light and hit the destroyer instantly. Made from the unknown metal of Immortal Palace, Odin is a metal destroyer who is more indestructible and almost indestructible than Ulu, one of the three major metals in the universe, with strong magic. Click! In that instant, the ripples on the surface of the lake began to intensify all over his body, and then, like 1,000 knives, dense cracks spread all over his body. It is as fragmented as a porcelain doll falling to the ground, and the golden mysterious pattern on its 12 sides is that the magic that Odin left on it is helping the destroyer to repair it. However, these are all in vain. The unparalleled shock wave invades the destroyer's body and collides with its core energy. Impossible! Loki's horrified furious rage, the whole body magic power was transmitted in remotely, and with the provision of magic power, more divine power in the destroyer's body was activated. Click! The destroyer suddenly inflated, alive like a balloon. Destroyer can be deformed, can rearrange and modify the density of matter, so that it can be transformed into other different forms, such as solid, liquid, and gas. In this way, it relieves the destruction caused by the shock wave. The balloons grew bigger and bigger, the cracks crisscrossed, Loki sweated profusely, and his magic became intermittent. His magic power actually began to dry up, and the destroyer drew too much magic power and still couldn't suppress it. Loki's face was green, and Odin's scepter was chopped to the ground in his hand, and the magic power was directly cut off to cancel the energy supply. Damn it, the damn Midgard people bad my plan, I won't let this planet go. Rocky gritted his teeth, secretly resentful. Without Loki's magic power pouring in, the divine power put into the destroyer's body by the god tears quickly fell silent like a tan of stagnant water. Advertisement then. Bang! The stone was shocked, and the deafening explosion sounded everywhere in the town, and the body of the destroyer was directly blown to pieces by the impact force of the rampage inside. The metal fragments were reduced to burning loss, shooting in all directions, and the airflow stirred up the air, swept away in a circular shock wave, and crushed the cracked ground. When the dust settled, everyone stared at the huge pitch-black crater dumbfounded. It's over? The destroyer was just blown to pieces like this. The fairy palace warrior Vista asked in a soft, trembling voice with a shocked expression on his face. Sif swallowed, his face was directly numb, and said cowardly, just a punch. Unbelievably, the weak Midgard blasted the destroyer armor of the immortal king, even if the manipulator was a weak chicken, it disappeared easily. It's too fake. Is this destroyer a fake made by Loki? This is the thought of the 4 members of the fairy palace. Sure enough. Collison's head was bald, how should such a strong man deal with it? Sure enough. Collison's head was bald, how should such a strong man deal with it? Shield had previously speculated that Saitama's weakness might be a mental attack, after all, the comics have not been drawn. But Charles, the most powerful spiritual master on Earth, has already broken up. How could this happen? Another punch? I obviously used a normal punch. After Saitama was taken aback, he threw his knees on the ground and rushed into the pothole and shouted. Hey, metal weirdo, why isn't it the previous attack? The previous energy can burn to the surface of the body, but it is completely incomparable. Saitama also believes that the destroyer should be better than the pineapple. He hasn't hit his serious punch yet. Teacher, the person who controls this machine is not strong. If you change to the original owner, I think it will be at least 3 times stronger than pineapple stage. Jiluosi stepped forward and analyzed. After a pause, I looked at the scattered metal fragments, slowly moving towards the center of the pothole, and said, and this metal armor seems to be restored. Triple? So that's how it is. When Saitama heard it, he took a deep breath and got up, exhaled, and walked towards Thor and his group. Thor, you have picked up the hammer now, do you want to? Advertisement. Jane held Thor's hand in a little fear. Thor tightly took out Thor's hammer and Sif took Jane aside. Midgard, I admit that you are the most powerful person I have ever seen except my father Odin. Thor, as the Prince of Asgard, the future king, if he hadn't held the hammer before, he would have taken it up and restored Thor's identity now. He didn't allow himself to shrink back, be afraid and fearful. Asgardians are never timid. Saitama questioned, Odin. Teacher, take the Norse mythology to see that Odin is the king of the gods, Thor's father. Jiluosi answered Kide, and by the way, turned the fierce boar into 2 headlights. Seeing Sif and Jane were envious, their eyes pricked Jiluosi like thorns. Yes, he is also the de facto master of the destroyer's armor. Only he can display the full power of the destroyer. If I were Thor who approached the gods mostly by hammers, my father Odin is the true god, the heavenly father of the 9 realms. A look of worship flashed through 900 in Thor's eyes. He just didn't conceal the gap between himself and the gods, he wanted to say it was his character, and Thor used to worship Odin with a strong force. It was only after tests that my father did not rely solely on force to stabilize the peace of the 9 realms. Then where is your father and see how strong it is? When Saitama heard this, some excitement appeared on his face. It turned out that Odin was a real god. If it were inferred from the destroyer, wouldn't it be far more than Pineapple Head? However, Saitama's words made Thor sound very contemptuous, and he was furious and yelled, "You should speak like this, and I can defeat you without my father's hands. Odin is the strongest and most admired in his heart, no one can offend." Then he continued, "You dead bald, you are not qualified to see the king of the gods." When Jiluasi heard this, she raised her hand directly to the support, "You said this to the teacher." "Stop, Jiluas, I'll take care of him." Saitama shook his stiff neck, making a creaking noise, and staring at Thor, as if looking at prey. Only this is more interesting. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.